The estate manager was having trouble keeping up with her duties, and even the kitchen was a mess. Time was running out, the girl shouted. It was almost dinner, and asked them to hurry, managing everything at once. Under such pressure, she sighed tiredly, saying that she was about to lose consciousness. Her name was Nellie Pepper. She hadn't slept for several days in a row, and no matter how much she worked, the work didn't get any less. She just wanted to sleep. Even in this state, she needs to be present at the event. If she knew what kind of position it was, she would never have agreed. The estate manager, the person in charge of the affairs of the duchy, manages a vast territory. He deals with finances and monitors agricultural lands, periodically reporting on the state of affairs to the Duke. Typically, the number of staff depends on the size of the territory in this vast duchy. Nellie Pepper is in charge of the estate. It's her, she works so hard because their master is perfect in everything. It's all because of this demon. Nellie called out to the Duke, asking for a moment. Duke Lionel Alterwood asked what was wrong. Nellie screamed at the Duke and cried that she wanted to take a vacation, otherwise she would die like this. Lionel replied with complete calm that she would not die. She won't die, of course. What's wrong with him? The girl thought irritably. Their master became Duke and owner of the Alterwood estate at the age of 14. He is a powerful man and third in line to the throne, but who would have thought that he is so cold-blooded? Nellie didn't know about the rest, but she would definitely die at this rate. The manager asked if she could take a break for at least a month. A month? Lionel was surprised. 3 weeks? No, she fawned, begging the Duke. Even 2, she couldn't do it anymore, and asked him to look at the circles under her eyes. She worked so hard that she couldn't sleep at night, and even her mouth was dry. Lionel looked, and wanting to see her closer, he said that he did not understand her. Nellie was embarrassed, and a barely visible blush appeared on her cheeks from how close the Duke was. Sighing, he asked if she was lying to him. No, the girl exclaimed, it's true. But 1 month is too long, said Lionel, who did not know who could replace her work. And at that moment, Nellie thought that he had changed his mind, but the Duke asked how he knew that she would not run away during her vacation. He'll run away, Nellie thought, angrily stabbing the stake, wondering how he could say something like that. Tears of resentment welled up naturally, because she had worked hard for all 3 years. During that dialogue, Lionel asked if she could promise to come back, how he could trust her. A chill ran through the girl's body, and she asked in horror if he trusted her. Had she ever let him down? Was he just making fun of her? Nellie was furious. These are unfair accusations. She never even thought about it, and she is not so irresponsible as to run away. And there was nowhere else to go. Miss was served dessert. It was the Duke's favorite delicacy, and the girl noticed the man's gaze on this dessert. True, he wanted it, and that's why Nellie asked if he wanted to change. Lionel was surprised. But he wasn't against such an opportunity. Oh, he was so handsome that Nellie simply couldn't be angry with him. She didn't even notice how angry she was with him. He was surprised himself. But if she spoke calmly, she would be able to smooth things over. And admitting her mistake, she asks for a vacation. Watching Lionel, she thought how cute he is when he eats dessert. Nellie relaxed. After a while, she still didn't touch the food. A certain heaviness appeared in her body. Still, she hadn't slept for 3 days. Her head hurt terribly. She got up from her seat thinking of leaving. But even though she wasn't resting, she couldn't believe it. Was it really that bad? The Duke became wary and called Nellie. But suddenly the girl's legs gave way and she almost fell, but Lionel managed to grab her. Her face looked pale. It was hard to breathe, as if someone was pressing on her chest. Was she really going to die so young? Had she worked so hard? The girl felt death approaching. But it wasn't fair. If she had been given leave right away, everything wouldn't have ended like this. She couldn't even say anything. Nellie did not want to die, and her last will and dying words were the desire to live. She prayed for help, but who would hear her thoughts? And after losing consciousness, the thought of taking revenge on the Duke came to her mind. The thought of making him pay and resign, and so the Duke asked her in front of her if she was the new manager. Nellie had an opportunity, but at the moment she couldn't comprehend what had happened. Nellie Pepper, manager of the Alterwood estate, died ingloriously at the age of 20. In the mansion, she was practically dead. There were 3 turning points in her life. The first happened after her father's death. When she was only 10 years old, her mother said that she would marry another man. She reeked of alcohol and had spent all her money, so they had no choice but to trust this man. Nellie asked if she would have a stepfather. No, her mother answered. The man did not know that she had a child, so she could no longer raise her. Her mother deceived her father and squandered the money, only she remained with her and she abandoned her for her own happiness. In a drunken stupor, the woman told her daughter to choose whether she wanted to be left alone or go to her uncle. That's right, that's how she ended up with her uncle, and the second turn happened when she was 17. Nellie had seen her aunt and uncle quarrel so many times and talk about the crazy gambler. She had to sleep in the living room, so why she couldn't cope with her husband, she didn't understand. The man said that there was no need to worry, a dying old man lived next door to them. And that's why he shouted for his wife to marry Nellie to him, and the girl was horrified when she heard this. When he dies, the fortune will pass to them. The girl thought with horror what they were talking about. How could she marry some strange old man? No, she didn't want that. Maybe they were crazy. No, no, the girl cried, and asked fearfully if he would do that to his daughter. The adults were furious. She didn't look like their daughter, and they helped her, so she should repay them for it. She was given a choice again, and after Uncle Yo kicked her out, after 4 months of wandering, Nellie came across an ad for an employee. After leaving her uncle, she began to take on odd jobs, but she could barely make ends meet, and she could handle this job. But she didn't know then that this place had a rather questionable reputation. It turned out that within a couple of months, she was the only one to submit an application. And then, yes, that's exactly what happened, the third turning point in her life. And that's when she ended up in the past, but how did that even happen, since she lost consciousness? And now, suddenly, out of the blue, I found myself back on my first day of work. Moreover, Lionel's arrogant tone had not changed at all. From the very beginning, he told the new employee that he didn't trust people. He told the manager to just do her job and not even try to make money from it. Damn mistrust. This time she wasn't going to die from overwork. He clearly had problems with his head. If it weren't for her, the estate would have remained in disarray. But suddenly she realized something. Heaven gave her a second chance, which means she can take revenge on Lionel. It's all for a reason. Previously, the Duke did not care about her at all, and Nellie had absolutely nothing left. She died a miserable death from overwork, and she promised herself that she would definitely take revenge on Lionel. Since she met him, it means she already signed the contract and got into the mansion, since it already happened. So she would make Lionel suffer from overwork. That was the theater in Nellie's head. One day she will win the Duke's trust and turn everything in her direction, and then suddenly, seeing that all the fields were ruined, he asks the manager and then learns that she quit yesterday. Then the Duke will understand that he should have sent her on vacation earlier without being able to cope with all the affairs. That's how it will be, thought Nellie. If she didn't work here, then all these difficulties wouldn't exist. But the coming winter is especially cold, and she now has neither food nor clothing, and nowhere to shelter from the snow and wind. She can save up money, destroy the estate, and take revenge, and then run away and open her own business. Now this was the best she could do, and then Lionel decided to voice the rather simple tasks of her work. He again listed all the duties that had weighed on her for 3 years. Did he really think that it was easier than easy? Realizing her responsibilities, Nellie thought, it's no wonder she died from overwork. He's just a devil. The Duke noticed some kind of impolite look. Nellie asked if it was about her, thinking how quickly he caught it. The man thought about it but still did not attach much importance to it and said that it was necessary to gather information. The Duke was initially too suspicious of the rumors circulating in public places. He sent her to the office. Everything was the same as 3 years ago. Nellie really did return to the past. But how could she take revenge on him? The main thing is not to harm the inhabitants of the duchy and not to tarnish her reputation, since she is planning to leave. To destroy the estate, you will have to live in it. It would be great to team up with someone. With someone who is able to fool the Duke, and indeed there was such a person, she remembered. Paul Lever, the scoundrel of the Duchy of Alterwood, is exactly how he is described. An unemployed man who spends his life drinking and gambling, constantly picking fights. He has a rather pathetic reputation and has been jailed numerous times. But surprisingly, Lionel ordered the case closed and released him, showing incredible generosity. Nellie thought that he was definitely the best fit for her purposes. Sowing will begin soon, so she will hand over a large plot of land to Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul will definitely not work, so the entire harvest will be destroyed, but the lenient Duke will assign a light punishment. If she says she didn't know anything, she'll save her reputation. which is a great plan. Nellie ran into the office to say hello and then headed to see Mr. Paolo. However, nothing had changed in the management. She was greeted by the familiar scene of workers working even in half-sleep. She lived like this before her death, and even if she hadn't appeared, they all would have died here. Her colleague hadn't even died yet, but was talking like a zombie, alerting others to the arrival of a human. Having learned that Nellie was the new manager, everyone introduced themselves. The zombie was Gerald, the girl was Sophie, and the last one was Tom. The supervisor of public facilities explained that they would carry out her instructions and asked them to get used to it. The overseers are the manager's assistants, collecting taxes and keeping accounting records, and the manager prepares a report based on the reports. Of course, she was involved in management and looked after the residents, in addition to communicating with the Duke. Sophie asked to call them if she needed anything, and finally Nellie sat down to breathe out in her office. At least she won't have to relearn everything like before, but can get straight to work. Immediately, without wasting a minute, the girl jumped up from her place, intending to go to Paul. In the city center, not far from the tavern, Nellie found a man who was thinking about having a drink. The girl greeted him and invited him in for a few words. The gentleman was already drunk. At first, he didn't even understand that they were talking to him, but Nellie confirmed that she was talking to him. The man asked who she was and why she needed him, and the girl remembered that she had completely forgotten to introduce herself. Presenting her ID, she announced that she was the new manager of the duchy. Paul immediately ran away from the girl, sobering up from fear. Nellie asked the gentleman to calm down and said that she had a proposal for him. The man cautiously asked what the proposal was, and the girl asked if he would like to work together. And so, in front of the man invited to the office, there was already a drawn-up contract. She wanted to put him in charge of farming, and upon hearing this, the guard's jaws dropped. And Nellie said that she would give Paula about 4 hectares of land, which the man exclaimed in horror. He could start tomorrow, she would pay in advance, and from the harvest, if he couldn't manage it himself, he could hire helpers. But with the condition that he could only hire people from the tavern. Paul asked in shock if this was a joke, and he cried out why she chose him, as if she was out of her mind. But Nellie did not give in. She knew that these conditions were beneficial to him and asked if he wanted to refuse. Naturally, who could refuse such an offer with such huge payments? And so, having given in to pressure from the manager, Paul agreed and signed the contract. At the end, he shouted that if anything happened, he warned her, and she would not be able to change her mind. And just before leaving, as if he was still trying to dissuade the girl, he told her to watch so that she wouldn't regret it. He was indeed very eccentric, but she didn't mind because she hoped that everything would go according to plan. That same evening, the Duke was informed that the new manager had made Mr. Paul responsible for the harvest, which he asked about. It doesn't seem like she recognized anything, but Paul Liver is a known scoundrel, but in Lionel's army he was a knight. They fought together in battles, and one day Lionel heard that his comrade had sold information to the enemy. The Duke couldn't get rid of his friend because of the rumors, so he continued to watch, and time flew by. But the war dragged on. Paul's wife, who remained in the city, eventually died, and upon learning of this, Paul sank into despair. For several months, he did not participate in military operations and drank constantly, becoming easily irritated. So he was kicked out of the army. If only Lionel had made his decision earlier. If he had started to delve into what happened, Paul would have been able to protect his wife. Lionel's heart is full of regrets. "It's strange," said the assistant. She had been warned about Paul. "This guy always does a terrible job of handling assignments." "Yes, it is strange," the Duke answered gloomily, a flood of memories flooding his mind. The new manager ignored the rumors and hired Paul, a man who knows absolutely nothing. Could it be a coincidence that she seemed to have found out about what had happened, and the Duke decided to talk to the new employee? At such a time, the assistant asked in horror if he was in his right mind. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. He was right, the knight agreed. Visiting a lady's room at such a time was contrary to the knightly spirit. But the Duke merely glanced at his entourage and explained that he was not a knight. Why did Lionel stop trusting people? At the age of 14, he buried his parents. His relatives tried to kill him as soon as he became a duke, and he looked for an opportunity to gain the title. Lionel needed to gain support. He went to the Queen and she promised him a title. At the same age of 14, he found himself on the battlefield. Surprisingly, he found his salvation in a place terribly close to death. But even on the battlefield, he had to go through another test. He faced the betrayal of a friend. He personally got rid of him, and this did not give him peace, and very soon he left the Knights. Lionel was tired of the war and refused the Queen's decree a couple of years ago. Then the woman asked with a smirk if he could do anything other than kill. These words again reminded him of the murder of his friend, and a lump stuck in his throat, and there were simply no words. The Queen grinned and said, 7 years, if in 7 years he can make Alterwood famous. She will not send him to the battlefield again, but if he fails, death awaits him for disobedience. There are only 5 years left to carry out the Queen's order. Lionel told his subordinates that she did not give it, but was just a worker. Be that as it may, the secretary shouted, it is impossible to make a visit at such a time. He didn't try to start a conversation, but he still asked the Duke what he was going to do. Lionel had nothing to say in response and simply stated that Prince Adelaide had hired her to kill him. The secretary almost fainted from such a statement from his master. The knight had nothing to say. Since the Queen's order was to achieve prosperity, they could do nothing. Then the assistant shouted that because of the Duke's suspicions, the workers continued to run away. As soon as they start working, they immediately leave as soon as they get used to it. They can't stand it anymore. He offered them a rest, but every single one of them ran away because the conditions were pure hell. He asked the Duke to wait at least a minute, promising to bring her tomorrow morning, asking him to understand that the workers needed to sleep. Lionel noticed that they were coping without sleep. He shouted furiously that they were fighting on the battlefield. Is he going to continue like this? Actually, he himself couldn't take it anymore. Lionel asked him to stop, saying that he understood. The Duke ordered his assistant to bring her the next morning before breakfast, which he managed to do. But when Lionel said that he would check himself whether she was a spy, his comrade became depressed. The next morning, as promised, there was a knock on the door of the office and he brought in a female worker. Lionel looked out of the room and reminded her that he had actually asked her to be brought before breakfast. Both Nellie and even the Duke's companion were frightened by this expression on his face, and Lionel called the girl in. The Duke asked if she had not been asked to come before breakfast, so why had she only come now? They are all people, answered Nellie, and they need to eat first and then decide matters. Lionel said that she could have eaten after the meeting, but the cooks had not left any food, and there would be new food only for lunch. The man, sighing heavily, said that she would not die if she missed 1 dose, but then Nellie, interrupting him, shouted, "No. Her temperature is rising. Does he really think it's better if she gets sick the day after she gets settled in? Why is he doing this to her? She hasn't even started work yet. The Duke told her to lie skillfully if she does it." He explained that he himself had not slept or eaten properly for 6 years and was fine, so how was she any different? What? The girl thought in horror. Is he still saying this with such pride, as if this is normal? Even though she ended up in the demon's abode, she won't fall into his clutches. What kind of life is this? Offering to forget it, he said that he heard she handed Paolo a large piece of land. And he asked suspiciously why. Of course, she hoped that Mr. Paul would ruin everything, but okay, in fact, she had prepared an answer. The girl answered the Duke that he was strong, he was alive and well, and was even raising a son. Having presented her arguments, Nellie asked whether it was possible to allow such a person to drink, since he was irreplaceable. The man, wary, asked how she knew that he had a son and that he drank. Oh, well, the expected question, but she doesn't have an answer. After all, yesterday was her first day at work. It is clear that it is quite strange that she already knows everything about him, and even if she says that she heard it from someone, that would be suspicious. Yesterday she only communicated with Lionel. The Duke got tired of waiting and asked how long he would have to wait for an answer. But suddenly, a bright thought came into the manager's head, she remembered. And that's true, because yesterday I spoke with someone else, and it was Mr. Paul. The Duke asked what she said. Nellie explained that he got drunk and told everything himself. The girl was nervous, but Paul was really drunk, and she didn't think the Duke would go and interrogate him. He asked, and so she decided to just go ahead and give him the land, right? She thought his physical form was suitable for the job. With a hint of menace in his voice, the Duke rose from his seat, saying that he hoped she had made the right choice. Because if the duchy has any problems, she will be responsible. After this conversation, unfortunately, everything did not end. The Duke went with her to the office. Nellie asked warily what he wanted there, and Lionel replied that he wanted to check how she was doing there. Was he really always like this? Why did this happen all of a sudden? But suddenly the carriage rocked and Nellie lost her balance. But she fell on something soft and warm it was difficult to understand with her eyes closed. It can't be. She raised her head and Lionel asked if she was okay. Immediately, Nellie jumped back to her place, screaming in surprise at what that even was. The Duke noticed the calluses on her hands and asked if she was not a noble lady. Nellie replied that she was only half noble because her father had not inherited the title. The Duke asked the coachman what was the matter. He apologized and said that the carriage had fallen into a hole. This outcome upset Lionel, and not wanting to put up with wasting time, he said that they would go on horseback from now on. Having prepared the horse, Lionel asked the manager if Lionel knew how to ride a horse. No, the girl answered uncertainly. Then he asked to forgive him. Nellie, stunned, asked what he was going to do. But she screamed in surprise, and the next moment the Duke lifted her onto the horse. She was so afraid she couldn't move. He mounted the horse and said that they were going to ride. Nellie shrank all over, and the horse reared up and galloped forward. The girl screamed in fear at how fast it was, but the Duke explained that this was how it should be. Sighing, Lionel told the worker to take his hand if she was scared, and asked if she was really that weak. Judging by her build, she knew nothing about martial arts, but he does, Nellie asked. There's no point in getting into trouble, the girl thought, unless he wants to get stabbed with a needle. Once there, Nellie got off her horse and, leaning against the wall, thought that it felt as if they were still riding. The Duke said they would stop here. Nellie asked if he would go alone. Lionel confirmed it. What kind of tricks are these? She thought suspiciously. The Duke himself led the horse and allowed the worker to leave. Something was wrong here. He remembered his words during the trip. It can't be. Does she doubt her? Asked Nellie. Now she understood why he suspected her. He specifically checked the calluses on her hands and wanted to know if she knew how to fight. Lionel had nothing to say in response because it was all true, but did she really look so much like a traitor? But then the Duke reminded her that he had only met her yesterday and had the right to be cautious with a stranger. This was no reason to be angry. Ah, so that's how it is, Nellie thought with disappointment. For Lionel, she is still a stranger. She completely forgot about it and was stupid, but why was she so sad about it? The worker agreed that he had a right to suspect her and asked him to be careful on the way, and the Duke instructed her to simply not give any reason to doubt her. Fine, she answered meekly. Nellie wanted to take revenge on him so much that she didn't even think about the joys and difficulties they had shared, but now there was nothing left of that. It felt like she was a stranger here, so stop, that's enough, Nellie interrupted herself. Still, she's already gotten used to being alone. It's not the most important thing now. Cheer up, Nellie Pepper. A couple of days later, it was time to check the land given to Paolo. But what did she see? What was the matter? Why was it so clean here? The field was just perfect, not a single weed, and yet she had entrusted the land to Mr. Paul. Hadn't he been chilling all the time? Perhaps Lionel had threatened the residents, but Nellie no longer knew what to think about what had happened. The girl, in horror, asked what had happened, and by that time Paul had found her. Hearing a familiar voice, she immediately understood who it belonged to. Mr. Paul turned to the manager with satisfaction and asked how she was doing. Just a couple of days ago, Nellie came to see Mr. Paolo and saw him resting under a tree. Yawning, he asked what was wrong, and Nellie happily noticed that he hadn't worked at all. What did she expect, the man asked. Does she really think that he will put up with such an attitude? The girl looked around. There were stones and a bunch of weeds all over the field. Wow, Mr. Paul, her hope for revenge, he was perfectly fine. The man said with displeasure that she could visit him at any time. He would show her what he was capable of. We'll see, thought Nellie, but if you take a closer look at this gentleman's body... It became clear that he had a very pumped-up body, and he was a natural-born farmer. Nellie thought it would cause a big stir. Well, okay, he had to be praised. She shouted enthusiastically that she never thought he would work so well, but he works as he should. What Paul asked in shock, and Nellie said that she was speaking from the heart and asked him to believe her. Paul asked irritably, does he even think he knows how to do this job? She will regret that she brought it to this. No way, Nellie cried. In fact, she was surprised that he came. The weather was hot today. She enthusiastically asked if perhaps he should be given a tent. What? Paul asked, stunned. There's no point in bothering him like that. No, he definitely needs it, Nellie assured him. She was going to ask for even more money, to put up a canopy not only for Paolo, but also for other workers. I was planning to increase expenses, but with the spoiled harvest, everything will only get worse. And he will leave the Duke without any money at all. Looking at the manager, Paul thought that she was crazy, and it was better not to catch her eye. She was worried that she had laughed too ominously and asked the gentleman where he was going. Paul said that he was on a break. It's break time. The sun hasn't even set yet. It's not even lunchtime. Awesome. All this was also before the eyes of the manager, simply a great worker for taking revenge on the Duke. That's how he was in Nellie's eyes. She said goodbye to him joyfully and asked him to be careful, thinking that she could not leave everything like this. For a while, Paul had been doing great, but now Nellie, horrified, asked what had happened. Paul didn't know what to answer and just scratched his nose, embarrassed, but with a hint of pride. Then he called out to his comrades, informing them that the manager had come to see them. Mr. Paul's comrades immediately rushed to the call after all. They were really looking forward to Nellie and wanted to see her. The men said they tried very hard. She finally came. They waited. Each of them wanted to see the face of their savior, who gave them work. Nellie admitted that she was really surprised, but she still didn't understand why they had changed so suddenly. In fact, Paul admitted, embarrassed and awkward, it was all thanks to her. The man admitted that, frankly speaking, he even felt awkward now was the best time to confess. The crying man said that after his wife's death he began to waste his life and was unable to find a job. Each time he began to lose his temper and felt like a useless member of society. And I really didn't understand why I lived, and if I didn't do anything, then I wouldn't feel useless. Nellie said sadly that she understood him, but in reality she didn't really want to know. She thought that she should stop this conversation and turn to the gentleman, but he interrupted her. Paul looked at her with trepidation and said with gratitude, however, she believed in him. What a turn of events, Nellie thought, stunned, and asked what? Mr. Paul asked her not to pretend that she didn't understand, but in fact, she really didn't understand. He explained to the manager that she encouraged him even when he was slacking off from work. She supported him even if he didn't do anything, telling him that he did a great job today. For a moment it flashed through his mind that she was crazy, but suddenly his conscience woke up and he thought about pulling out a couple of weeds. He tearfully begged her to understand that he did not want to let down someone who believed in him, and Nellie had no intention of believing in him. Paul's comrades were touched by this story. The girl wondered in surprise why they were crying. It was she who should be crying. The man admitted that he still forced them to work for a couple of days. He even managed to convince his comrades, and they all decided to please her. Paul, putting his hand on his chest, said that she could rely on him. He would do an excellent job so she didn't have to worry. You shouldn't smile like that, Nellie thought, crying. She didn't want any responsibility. Why did he suddenly start complicating everything? Okay. Nellie quickly pulled herself together. There's nothing we can do about it, since it's already happened this way. It's a shame, but we'll have to fire Mr. Paul. Nellie walked as black as a thundercloud. The field workers saw her and asked if she was the new manager. Oh my God, the girl exclaimed, and the manager asked, she's young, but she looks so tired. Her words hurt Nellie a little because it was all because all her plans had failed. She told the girl that she had to get to know everyone, she was new, and that's why she was tired. She asked if there were any difficulties with work, and the lady replied that they simply endure and work, but Nellie got to know the residents. The residents she will be responsible for are commoners who work within the Duke's lands. And yet, if any inconveniences arise, she asked that you be sure to contact her, for example regarding payment issues or shortages of things. The woman thanked her and asked if it was possible to replace the tools. They were so worn out that it had become difficult to plow with them. Nellie said that she would ask at the forge and replace them with new ones. The woman was glad to have a normal manager and asked her to wait a little. She brought herself some potatoes for a snack and asked the Deuce to help herself. Nellie felt awkward. She did what she had to do, and the residents are always so caring. It's a pity that before she died she forgot about them because of fatigue. The woman asked to accept this as gratitude, and Nellie could not quit this job because of such trifles. She was still angry with Paul, but after meeting the residents, her soul felt better. Nellie returned to the office. She thought about firing Paul, but she couldn't find a reason. It would be strange to fire a good employee. The girl was thinking about how to solve this problem, but suddenly a child's voice called out to her. The boy grabbed her hand and asked if she was the new manager, and said enthusiastically that she had hired his dad. Yes, Nellie answered uncertainly. She is the new manager, but who is he? The boy said hello and introduced himself as Jerome, saying that his father's name was Paul Lever. So it was his son. How awkward. But what did he want, she thought. The boy thanked the manager. And he said that thanks to her, his dad doesn't cry anymore. Nellie became wary. Jerome said that his dad stopped drinking and now doesn't let him go hungry. He also said that he would be a good father, and it was all thanks to her, as other villagers said. True, Nellie asked in horror. It means that if she fires Paul now, this boy will have to starve. No, she couldn't do that to the child. She couldn't fire Paul. He gave her a clover ring as a gift and looked at her with such eyes that she simply couldn't leave this boy to starve just because of a desire for revenge. Entering the office, she told Sophie, Gerald, and Tom that she was back and everything was as before. It seemed like they were drowning in paperwork today, too. Nellie asked Sophie if she had slept at all. The girl asked with a smile if she had finished her work. She looked terrible. It suddenly occurred to Nellie that all three of the guards were formerly commoner knights, and after they were wounded, they left the service and began to work here. She heard that it was then that they learned to write and read. It was very difficult to cope with such a quantity of paperwork, and she asked Sophie to get some sleep while she dealt with the rest. She led her away from the table, saying that there was only a little left. Sophie could not believe her ears. True? Sophie asked in surprise. She wasn't joking. The manager told her to sleep while she had the chance. She herself hadn't slept all night yesterday, but Sophie hadn't rested for 3 days. I thought that by the time she had finished everything, it would be time to go and report to Lionel. Having to skip dinner today, noticing that it was getting dark, Nellie rushed to the Duke. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice when it was time for her report. Bursting into the Duke's office, the girl apologized for being late, and Lionel confirmed that she was late. She apologized, and the Duke asked why she was late accepting the documents. Nellie explained that she had been too focused on work, promising that this would not happen again. Her stomach growled loudly, and the Duke's assistant could not contain his emotions and immediately pretended that he had nothing to do with it. Embarrassed, Nellie turned back to the Duke and suggested returning to the report. But to her dismay, her stomach continued to rumble. Laughing nervously, she asked what was wrong with her stomach, thinking, "Oh damn, can't you keep it down any further?" Lionel sighed and told her to change and come back, saying that he would listen to the report at dinner. At dinner, he asked her if he was going to have dinner with her and what she didn't like. No, she was just worried about Lionel's strange behavior. Suddenly, the Duke explained that they would go to Brashtet, which Nellie became wary of meant that restaurant. In an instant, she ran out of the room, shouting that she would change right away and come back. Brashtet, a restaurant known for its high prices and delicious food, she had only been there once in her entire life. But all her clothes looked bad, so she didn't change them and just braided her hair. But then Nellie noticed the carriage and thought that Lionel had come out to meet her. As soon as the girl approached, the Duke opened the carriage door for her and asked her to get in. Before she could thank him, Lionel asked if she would only take off these clothes if she shed her skin. What a bastard. "Oh, what are you saying?" answered Nellie. "That's not true. That's not true," the Duke asked menacingly and coldly. "Ahem, yes," Nellie answered timidly that she couldn't. What a witty joke, and laughed nervously. "Is she a lizard so she can shed her skin?" the girl asked, muttering under her breath. "Lizard," the Duke thought in surprise and grinned. What a strange woman. "Exactly, this is the place, this noble atmosphere. Wow, she really has already arrived in Brashtet." She couldn't wait to see how delicious the dinner would be, but suddenly she heard condemnation from the outside. Just look at why the Duke arrived accompanied by such a lady, what kind of clothes and manners. It's no wonder they were whispering. After all, Lionel is third in line to the throne. It was understandable that people would whisper when they saw him with such an inconspicuous girl like her. Lionel apologized for their rudeness, realizing that he had put her in an awkward position. "No, it's not worth it," answered Nellie, thinking that Lionel wasn't to blame for this. As if to apologize, he said that she could order whatever she wanted. "It's not worth it," she answered, thinking he would buy everything it was a chance to spend his money. The Duke told the worker that if she was lying, she should at least not show it on her face. Nellie ordered half the menu, except for the milk pudding with strawberry jam and the strawberry cake with cream. Lionel asked why everything except those 2 dishes. She replied that she didn't want to curry favor with him using food. The Duke frowned and asked for milk pudding to be added to the order and for dinner for 2 to be brought. The waiter took the order and said that they would prepare everything right away. As soon as he walked away, the Duke asked the worker what she had in mind. Nellie thought maybe she had ordered too much and nervously replied that she had nothing in mind. The Duke noticed that she was confused when he asked, and this suspicion frankly infuriated him. He himself told her that she could order whatever she wanted. What a cheapskate! But whatever way he looked at it, he didn't quite understand why she had entrusted the job to Paolo, relying on some kind of intuition. And she also supported this lazy man. What kind of owner would hire a lazy person and even encourage him? The Duke asked. Maybe she acted this way because she knew about everything and wanted to win his trust. Nellie wondered what he was getting at. Trust, huh? Of course she wanted to win him over. But she didn't want to anymore. She worked tirelessly, and all she received in response was a look full of distrust. Therefore, she no longer expected trust from him. Nellie took quite a long time to collect her thoughts. And yet she answered that she was not behaving this way so that he would believe her, especially since her salary did not depend on it. And she asked the Duke not to worry, assuring him that she had nothing of the sort in her thoughts. The order was delivered soon: lamb steak with truffles, duck leg comped with sturgeon caviar. God, the ladies sighed, what an insatiable woman, why order so much, this is so base. And let them discuss her, thought Nellie while having dinner, since that's what they want. But this establishment still gives away the leftovers to the local poor, even if she doesn't eat it all. She would simply spend the Duke's money and help those in need, but then her gaze fell on the man's plate. And here he was again eating in such a strange way. Why does he always eat steak with sugar and salt? Nellie thought. She even lost her appetite. She couldn't understand his tastes. Well, he could have thought about who was sitting at the same table with him. Suddenly, the Duke noticed someone staring at him. He asked if something was wrong. No, Nellie answered, holding out. It was just the first time she had seen someone send a steak with sugar. Sugar? Lionel thought in surprise and asked how she knew it was sugar, since there was no label. Nellie dropped the subject, asking for permission to hire more workers for the control center. The area is large and needs to be looked after, but there are only 3 workers, and they are not feeling very well. Just a little more and they will turn into corpses, the girl said. Lionel's hand trembled. He reminded her sullenly that he had clearly told her, Nellie Pepper, to mind her own business, so why was she meddling in other people's business? The Duke asked. Why does he say this? If he wants them to do only the work assigned, then they should be given as much as they can complete. No, Nellie cried. This is the well-founded opinion of the estate manager. Regulating the work of the servants is also her responsibility. Lionel asked, irritated, if she was being rude to him now. Yes, she answered, stuttering fearfully but confidently. She was just doing her job. Even if he thought it was impudence, she didn't care. When he was so serious, Nellie became very scared, but she had to say what she thought. And he said awkwardly, even if he looks at her like this and like that. Nellie made a look similar to the one she sees from the Duke, and when she finished, she exclaimed that even so it would not change her opinion. Lionel asked if that was how he looked at her. Yes, the worker exclaimed discontentedly. In response, he simply grinned and asked if she thought he was looking at her with the expression on his face like a well-fed chipmunk. For a moment, Nellie was taken aback, but then she blushed in horror and recoiled and asked what he was saying, thinking that he had gone crazy. What the hell is this crazy Duke, this well-fed chipmunk, talking about? What kind of comparison is this? So why was he looking at her with that expression again? Why did he always embarrass her? Pulling herself together, Nellie sat down and asked again whether he would allow her or not. She felt sorry for Sophie, Tom, and Gerald, who were not sleeping and were dying of fatigue. The Duke was again suspicious of the fact that she had already memorized the names of the guards. Yeah, damn, it doesn't matter now. He didn't even listen to what she was saying, and apparently he's not going to give permission. All the time he talks nonsense, noticing that they brought desserts from Nellie's basement to his Duke. And she said that it would cost a little more, but the effectiveness would definitely increase. Naturally, she will interfere with him. Her target for revenge was the Duke, but her poor colleagues needed to be given a little break. Give them a vacation so that they develop a concept of the end of the working day. And at the same time, it would be possible to spend a lot of the Duke's money. Lionel agreed to try. He offered to watch with a frightening look and allowed her to do whatever she wanted. It suddenly became somehow cold, and the girl fearfully wondered why he looked so ominous. If he had already allowed it, he could have done it in a nice way, but so they headed back to the estate. Nellie really did fall asleep. Lionel had never met a person who was so unashamed. Although she still had thoughts that she was deliberately pretending to lull his vigilance, Although the Duke did not understand the reason, he decided to take advantage of the opportunity and look at the documents Pepper brought. Sophie, Gerald, and Tom are doing a good job of managing the area and collecting taxes, but they still have difficulty drawing up documents previous managers simply reported the overseer's omissions. They even demanded punishment for the delayed work, and Nellie Pepper herself filled in the missing parts. Her actions and thoughts are simple, and there is no malice in her, the Duke was convinced. It seems she works hard. However, he was very tense with a strange feeling that he could not define. After some time, his lordship was informed that they had arrived, and Lionel began to wake up Nellie. But the girl did not respond in any way, and sighing, he ordered them to go to the Western Tower and then to the office. The carriage arrived, and a maid ran out to meet his lordship, asking for permission to enter. But the man refused help and only asked where the manager's room was. The girl said that she would accompany him herself and led him to Nellie Pepper's room. The Duke himself put the young girl to bed and covered her with a blanket. The girl muttered something in her sleep, and looking at the sleeping beauty, the Duke, enchanted, reached for her hair. But then the girl shivered from the cold and covered herself with a blanket. Lionel immediately raised his hands. Having put the girl to bed, he sheepishly headed towards the exit of the room. But he stopped at the threshold. Realization came to him, and he thought in amazement at what he had just tried to do. All this time his assistant was sitting at work in the office, but suddenly noticed movement. He asked the Duke if he had just returned. Yes, Lionel answered briefly. And sitting down at the table, he asked Ryan if he had ever broached the subject of his preferences with Nellie Pepper. The assistant asked what preferences exactly he was talking about. Strange, the Duke replied. He tapped the table and asked if he looked like a strawberry lover. Not at all, Ryan replied. Then Lionel said that during dinner, Nellie Pepper asked to remove strawberry desserts from the menu and said something strange. She said she had no intention of winning him over with food, said she had removed them because she was not interested in winning his favor. This means that she doesn't want to impress him with food. It sounds like she actually knows his taste preferences. It was really suspicious, and she also became too agitated when he asked her about having ulterior motives. Moreover, she ordered a lot of food, but hardly touched it. She was there for the first time, but it seems she is already familiar with the restaurant's policy. Ryan asked if he thought it was done intentionally for the homeless, as the Queen was concerned about their welfare too. It seemed, Ryan said, that she was trying to make a good impression on him after all. Lionel chuckled. He didn't think so. On the way back, she fell asleep and snored. It seemed that becoming a duchess was not her priority. Yes, Lionel agreed with a chuckle. She is full of mysteries. Looking at his lordship, Ryan couldn't tell whether he liked it or not. He said he would set up a meeting and try to find out if she really knew his preferences. And also, I asked Comrade Lionel to tell Aretha to study Nellie Pepper's past. How strange, Nellie thought. Waking up with the rays of the morning sun, the carriage was not shaking. And why so softly? This already alerted the girl, and she jumped out of bed. She wondered in surprise why she was in her room, but quickly realized that she had fallen asleep in the carriage. But does this mean that Lionel took her to the room? Damn, it can't be. Why would a man like Lionel drag around an employee he's not close to? Nellie was sure that he simply asked someone to do it, yes. There was no way that could happen. The girl arrived at work at the office, but Sophie ran into her right away. The girl said with alarm that when she woke up, all the accounting papers were filled out and asked if this was her doing. Well, yes, Nellie answered awkwardly. She was going to help them when she had free time. But as they hire more new executives, they may not have to work as hard. Sophie's face immediately changed, and Nellie thought to find out what had happened. But suddenly I noticed that the other assistants were also behaving strangely when the new managers were mentioned. The men asked if this was true, really true. Yes, of course, answered Nellie. His lordship gave her permission. Before she could finish speaking, the staff threw her up in the air, favoring Miss Nellie. They shouted gratefully that she was their savior, and the girl fearfully screamed at the madmen to put her down on the ground. Sophie told Miss Nellie that they really thought they would work themselves to death. Tom said that from now on he would always be on her side and become her shield. And Gerald enthusiastically picked up, saying that then he would be her slave, and asked her to step on him. They continued to talk such nonsense, and Nellie wondered if it was so hard for them that they had gone completely crazy. In her past life, it never even occurred to her to ask for more staff. She thought she could take on the extra work. Seeing the three of them so happy made her feel bad for the memories, but okay, that was in the past now. In any case, they trust her. Thinking about the past, she remembered that soon the queen will soon order the duchy to grow crops. That's it. She will destroy him. That should be enough to make up for the pain she has suffered. But suddenly, Ryan Danio knocked on the door and asked Nellie Pepper if she was there. Of course, the girl was surprised at what Ryan could be doing here, but she still let him in. But frozen in horror, she asked what it was. These were dresses. Ryan explained that his lordship was giving them as an apology for unintentionally putting her in an awkward position. It was because of those nobles who gossiped about her. The man said that he would arrange for them to be taken to her room. Everything was fine, she replied, and asked to convey her gratitude to the Duke. Still, Nellie was thinking of keeping a few for herself and selling the rest. When the servants were leaving, Nellie asked the master if he was going with them. No, Ryan answered. She asked what was the matter, and the man replied that he had thought about taking a walk near the fields with her. What a banal excuse, Nellie thought. The Duke clearly asked to find out something about her. Ryan asked the Duke if it was really necessary to check her background. She didn't seem like a bad person. What remains hidden is often more dangerous, and she wants to hire more help. So I asked for a budget for this too, and Ryan asked with concern if he was sure about it. She said it would make things more efficient, so it was worth a try, and it was also strange to be so genuinely concerned about her assistance. He asked that they remember to carefully study the people chosen. Ryan agreed with his lordship. And as I watched, I thought that his expression didn't seem to be one of distrust, but rather as if he was proud of her. To be honest, his lordship didn't seem to be very suspicious of Nellie Pepper, but he noticed that she had become very close to the gentleman. Yes, probably, answered Nellie. She did not expect such a violent reaction. Anyway, since Ryan is here to keep an eye on her, he'll just entertain him and go back to the office. But then, unexpectedly, workers came running to the manager. What's going on? She thought in horror. This is a riot. She hasn't even done anything yet. The boy's name was Jerome. His father was Paul Lever. Until recently, the villagers called his father a boor. After my mother died, my father drank and cried constantly. But lately, Dad hasn't been crying and has been working a lot with his friends. How did he change so suddenly, you ask? It's all thanks to the new manager. Nellie thought it was a riot, but now, looking closely at their faces, she understood. And I saw familiar features in them. They were the parents of those 4 weaklings, Paul's friends. He asked Miss Nellie to take it. He brought her some corn to express his gratitude. They asked her to take pumpkin and potatoes, but they all put a lot of pressure on Nellie. She had started all this with not the best intentions, but they treated her with such warmth that she felt guilty. She had to give credit to Paolo and said that it was all thanks to him, who had put in a lot of effort to persuade their sons. Shouldn't they show their gratitude to him? He has a son, so he needs food much more than she does. The parents noticed that the new manager was really different and even worried about Paula's family. For some reason, the conversation turned out exactly this way. The woman said that they would do it the way she wanted. Someone's father praised Miss for her care and said that Miss Nellie was the best. Here's another misunderstanding, and she just said it because she felt uncomfortable. Ryan asked if she was okay. Nellie answered yes and offered to finish the inspection of the area. After some time, Ryan asked Miss Nellie. It had been about 2 weeks since she came here. 16 days had passed, she replied, and the man noticed that she had achieved a lot in such a short time. Convinced Paul to work, replaced old farm tools. And she set up tents for rest, Nellie answered correctly, thinking that she was simply trying to squander Lionel's money. And then the man approached the main topic, how she learned about the Duke's preferences. The manager coughed, and Ryan said he heard she had guessed his eating habits perfectly. His preferences, the girl thought. Could he really be talking about strawberries so she knows? The man realized. Pressing Nellie, he asked how she knew about this. Only a few, including him, Arita, and the butler, were aware of this. So, who told her this information? Ryan asked. She worked side by side with him for 3 years, but she couldn't say so directly. Brushing off the question, the girl replied that she probably overheard it somewhere by accident, but it didn't matter. Important, Ryan replied coldly. Knowledge of his lordship's tastes in food could greatly increase the chances of a successful poisoning. Poisoning, Nellie was surprised. Such a thing had never even occurred to her. Yes, she disliked Lionel, but she could not even think of killing him. Or maybe it wasn't about her, but then about someone. Lionel can really be rude, and sometimes he's too harsh with those around him. But not to the point of wishing him dead. The truth is that he cares about his people. So it was hard to imagine that anyone could think about it. Nellie asked if anyone was plotting to kill his lordship and for what purpose. Ryan explained that it was just a guess. He meant that it could happen. The manager breathed a sigh of relief, which meant that nothing had happened yet, and thank God for that. But suddenly she caught herself thinking that she suddenly felt calm. Why was she worried about Lionel at all? Well, yes, she thought. If the Duke dies, how can she then avenge herself? She found an excuse for Nellie's anxiety. She convinced herself that this was precisely the reason she was worried, but that same evening she went to the tavern for a glass of beer. The hood hid her face and the worker became curious about who it was. He said that he would bring it now. The tavern was full of people. She must have heard rumors about Lionel's poisoning. She is not here in any way because she is worried, but because she wants to successfully take revenge on Lionel. Nellie Pepper has been hanging around the tavern for a good hour now, trying to gather information about Lionel's possible poisoning. She was already thinking about leaving, when suddenly the conversation turned to her, the new manager of the estate. Nellie stayed to listen. The men hoped that she would hold out longer. They had already kicked out many. It's all because their Duke is special. That's what the girl said in her thoughts. That's what she's talking about. The men asked why he was so obsessed with the land, what had happened. Nellie was bored. Doesn't he know that his fiancée, whom he had known since birth, ran away with her cousin, breaking off their engagement? He thought that the Duke was clinging to the earth to soothe his wounded heart. Nellie had once heard that he had a fiancée. Focusing on something could help take his mind off his worries, the man reasoned. Even so, Nellie was freaking out. Why did his broken heart mean they had to work to death? And he always watches and suspects every time. Nellie swore that she would take revenge and asked for the bill when leaving. Returning to the mansion, she sat down on the swing. Her head was spinning. She probably drank too much. Nellie wondered how she would even get to the Western Tower. She would probably fall down the stairs in this condition. But suddenly, a large shadow fell across her face, and the girl turned her gaze, seeing Lionel in front of her. "Lionel," the Duke asked again, taken aback by the fact that the girl was addressing him by name. He asked if she was drunk. "Yes," Nellie exclaimed, "completely drunk." Lionel smiled and said that she was crossing all boundaries. "So what?" asked the manager. The man asked what she was doing in such suspicious clothes. He was uneasy about the large hood. "I went to the tavern," she replied. "And why ask the Duke?" The drunken head began to get irritated by how many questions the gentleman was asking her, as if he was interrogating her. It was difficult to contain her emotions, and she jumped up and told him to stop, shouting that he always suspected her. "She is not his cheating fiancée," Nellie claimed, saying whatever came to mind. And she asked irritably, or did he just love to interrogate her? Lionel was taken aback. "Seriously," she told the gentleman, "he himself told her to report all the little things she heard in public places. And he suspects her even when she does what he tells her, gives her a ton of work, and constantly scolds her." She said that he was very angry. Nellie understood that she continued to splash out her dissatisfaction. She should have stopped, but her body wouldn't obey, when suddenly Lionel interrupted her and said that he had never scolded her. "Of course," the girl answered cheekily. "Not yet," Lionel, sighing heavily, said that she was out of her mind. Nellie pulled away from the Duke and, sighing, said that she really wanted to sleep. So he really wants to sleep, she thought, as she lay down and immediately fell asleep on the swing. Lionel looked at this whole scene in amazement and said how strange it was. He shook her shoulder and called her name, but Nellie didn't even bat an eyelash, resting peacefully. The Duke laughed nervously and asked in shock how they had managed to hire such a problematic manager. The man thought maybe he should just fire her and not waste time worrying. But he quickly remembered that she had already won the trust of the locals, and Ryan seemed to like her too. Sitting down next to the girl, the Duke thought that her dismissal would probably lead to a rebellion. As soon as she lowers her head, she immediately falls asleep. It seems he heard that she was kicked out of her relative's house. After wandering, facing difficulties, and finally finding a place, it becomes logical that she works a lot. Those calloused hands show how much hardship she has endured. But still, there is something strange about her. Ryan reported to Lionel that the manager seemed quite observant. When he asked how she knew his preference, she said she guessed when she saw him looking at the menu. If this is true, then it is not excluded, but should he find out more about it? "No, this is enough," the Duke answered. Although he didn't question Ryan further, he hadn't looked at the menu once that day. Moreover, she is strangely relaxed around him, and he does not frighten her at all. No, what's more important is that she's very friendly with him, as if they've known each other for years. While running his fingers through Nellie's hair, Lionel asked if they had met before. It was a ridiculous idea, more plausible that she had studied it before becoming manager. Everything else didn't add up either. Maybe he's just weird. It's amazing, Lionel thought with a sigh, despite the fact that she's so troublesome. He feels he must make sure she gets to her room safely. It was the second time he had carried her into the room himself, and he had told Nellie Pepper out loud that there would not be a third time. In the morning, Nellie woke up with the first rays of the sun hitting her face. She immediately jumped out of bed, thinking about what had happened. It seemed like something like this had happened before. Okay, the girl recalled. Yesterday she went to the tavern, drank a lot, and sat in the garden for a short time. And then it seemed as if something else had happened, and suddenly Lionel's face flashed through his memories. She thought she was dreaming about her life before she worked herself to death, not believing that he had carried her into the room. She went outside. Although she was still incredibly sleepy, she woke up early because of the alcohol. Walking through the garden, Nellie thought about taking a nap on a bench nearby for another 30 minutes. The Knights will start training soon anyway, and then it will be too noisy to sleep, even if you really want to. As soon as Nellie lay down on the bench, Lionel's voice asked if it was her hobby to sleep outside. "Your Grace," she turned to him and the Duke asked, "Today is your Grace already." And how else, Nellie thought. Peacock. She looked as if she was thinking about something disrespectful, he noted with great insight. Lionel said that if she didn't like the room, she could say so and he would change it for her. But the girl awkwardly replied that she liked everything. Then the Duke asked if it was really her hobby to sleep on the street. What was he trying to say, Nellie wondered? Was he testing her again, or was he genuinely interested in how she was sleeping? He sighed and said, just after he carried her to the room, he suddenly found that she was sleeping again in another strange place. He took it, Nellie thought, stunned and taken aback. So wait, that means it wasn't a dream. Lionel really did carry her to the room when she was drunk. He did that a lot before she died, but he certainly wasn't this nice to begin with. And her outfit is still as simple as before, he noticed. She took her words back and replied that she was a simple, poor worker. Lionel asked if she was inclined to take jokes seriously. Yes, Nellie snorted, and she would take them to her grave. The Duke couldn't help but laugh at this. He was joking, but he didn't think she would take it that way. What's so funny? Nellie thought, embarrassed. He's handsome, flashed through her head. So, no, that's not right. She doesn't care why he's laughing. She's going to have breakfast. The girl said that she had to go, but suddenly Lionel called out to Nellie Pepper. When she looked back, the man asked if they had met before. Nellie flinched. His question had frightened her. But quickly getting her bearings, the girl asked in surprise if he was flirting with her right now. She asked him, smiling, if he knew it was a cliché, thinking that she was momentarily at a loss, but she spotted his provocation in time. She said coldly, "If there is nothing to discuss, she will go," and almost laughed at the expression on his face. Ha! It's his own fault. As Nellie left for breakfast, she felt such lightness in her soul, while the Duke remained behind in the cold. The girl came into the office, wishing everyone good morning. Sophie noticed that the miss was in a good mood today. So noticeably, smiling from ear to ear, Nellie asked, all because this morning she got the upper hand over Lionel. By the way, she suddenly asked the guards whether they had already posted an advertisement for hiring assistants. Yes, Sophie answered. The candidates should arrive today, which means they should already be ready. Tom suggested that Miss go down to them together. Are these all candidates? She asked in surprise. The population of the Duchy of Alterwood was about 3,000 people, and Nellie thought there would be more candidates. She asked Tom if there were really so few people who could write, read, and do basic math. There are more of them, he replied. A few do not want to work on the Duke's estate. They barely manage to gather these. Damn, that made sense. His reputation even reached the capital. Naturally, their residents heard about his antics. But even so, it was not at all what she expected. The girl asked who here could read and write, and who could calculate, and everyone who came raised their hands. And then she said that they were all hired. It didn't matter if they didn't know how to do the job. They could train them to do it well. The anxious girl trembled and asked if she would check them. This simplicity seemed suspicious. If you're lying, they'll soon find out. They'll go through a 2-day trial period, and then they'll sign a contract. And now she asked them all to start with basic training, and so Nellie left with a light heart. But someone left in the reception area was overcome with anxiety, this worried girl, 17-year-old Lizzie. And frankly, she can't read. She lied when she applied for the position. And all because if she doesn't start earning money right now, she will be forced to marry a rich old man. Although Lizzie couldn't read, she still decided to explain her situation to the manager. Because according to the villagers, the new manager was a very kind person. If she really is that kind, maybe he will hire her after hearing the backstory, she reassured herself before the conversation. When no one came in for a long time, Nellie decided to go out and check what was happening behind the door. She asked who she was, Lizzie apologized, but still couldn't control herself and burst into tears. She apologetically admitted that she had lied to her. Nellie stepped back in shock, wondering what was going on here. Nellie asked Lizzie if she would care to tell her what had happened when she calmed down a little. The truth is, the girl began, that when she submitted her application, she did not specify that she could not read. She was completely unsuitable for this job and she was very ashamed of the lie, but if she doesn't get the position, she will have to marry a rich old man, and her younger brother may die of hunger. Now Nellie understood her despair. Forced to marry an old man because of poverty, it was like a repetition of her fate. Turning to Miss Nellie, Lizzie asked for forgiveness for lying. But she tearfully said that if she gave her a chance, she would work with all her might. So she asked if she could hire her and burst into tears again. Nellie laughed at the absurdity of what was happening, but agreed she really had no choice. She asked if she could count. Yes, Lizzie answered. She remembered everything she heard and even knew how to multiply a little. This was already enough to be useful, so I asked her not to worry, but she would still have to learn to read. After work, Lizzie asked in surprise if there was an end of shift here. She had heard that there wasn't one. If she was ready to do anything, knowing that the work would never end, how desperate she must be, Nellie thought. Even if she is ready for anything now, she is unlikely to work so hard. After all, people like Paul are rare. But it was possible to try to take her, at least that's what it seemed to her then. As a result, the newcomers did the work of 3 people, and thanks to them, Sophie, Tom, and Gerald were able to rest 4 days a week. The rested Tom told the manager that today he caught a mushroom thief, and Gerald, who had burst into the conversation, said that he had cleared out the warehouse and taken inventory. Everyone was so enthusiastic that it was scary, but looking at their happy faces, she couldn't help but wonder if it was possible to be so happy. And even Lizzie, who had come to her earlier in tears, coped just fine. Sophie said that Lizzie even came up with a new format for the reports and offered to take a look. She said she would show her right now, and everything would be fine, except for her incredible clumsiness. All documents could be ruined in an instant. She is literally a human tornado, who destroys everything he touches, but immediately apologizes and assures that he will fix everything. And so it goes in a circle. Even the plants that Lizzie watered wither. Sophie said that they would sort it out themselves, but she asked her to simply rewrite everything in the register. It would be faster that way. If Lizzie made only mistakes like that, she would seriously consider leaving her. But Lizzie could perfectly rewrite the statement simply and from memory. Even though she apologized for ruining everything during Gerald and Tom's conversations, Lizzie was a genius. She learned at an incredible rate, mastering reading in just 1 day, and reduced 3 hours of calculations to 15 minutes, so despite the shortcomings. She even came up with a great format for the reports, and was also able to draw even lines in them. Nellie admired how well she worked, but the place was too small for her. Her talents needed to shine somewhere where they would be truly appreciated, and she wondered where Lizzie could work. None of her acquaintances wait, she had someone in mind. Why hadn't she thought of this before? She brought her to him and introduced her to Lizzie, the very girl she had spoken of. Nellie sent Lizzie to Lionel. The Duke looked suspiciously at the girl who was shaking with fear. Before this, she asked his lordship to take a look at how talented one of their new employees was. While handing over the report, she said that she works very quickly and also keeps records in perfect order. Nellie asked the Duke what he would say, maybe take her on as an assistant or secretary, thinking what a genius she was. How did she come up with such a plan? Lizzie will be able to use her talents as an assistant, but will also create problems. Lionel said that she looked very young. Lizzie said timidly that despite her 17 years, she does a great job, Nellie explained. Not that young, Ryan replied. She is only 2 years younger than Aretha, so Aretha is 19. Nellie was surprised. The Duke agreed to see how she would cope over the next few days, and Lizzie thanked him, saying she would try her best. He hoped so, Lionel said gloomily, frightening the young girl with his appearance. Nellie told Lizzie that everything was fine, it was just a show of severity, he was just trying to scare her. Ryan couldn't help but laugh. Nellie wanted only Lizzie to hear her. Was it really that loud? But it seemed Lionel didn't hear. As he began work, the Duke told the manager that if she had finished, she could go. Nellie gasped, laughed nervously, and said that she would go then, wishing Lizzie good luck in the end. The last part didn't turn out quite as she expected, but if she comes back in a few days, Lionel would probably be furious about the tornado named Lizzie, but as always, her expectations were completely dashed. It had been about a week since Lizzie had started working for the Duke, and this was her first visit ever. This tornado must have shaken Lionel pretty badly by now, Nellie hoped, and suddenly she heard a scream. Yes, here it is. This is the same sound that Lizzie makes after a huge mistake. Nellie enthusiastically burst into the office, asking Lizzie if she was okay. "Miss Nellie," the girl addressed her, crying, "everything is as she expected." Lizzie caused another accident. Nellie asked if she was hurt. "Not at all," Lizzie answered. She said that she would clean everything up right away. She just needed to wipe it with something. "Oh, at this rate all these documents will collapse now," Nellie rejoiced, and let them fall. But suddenly, Aret came to the girl's aid, Nellie hissed, thinking, well, why does he have such good reflexes? While running for a rag, Lizzie touched a feather with her elbow, and now it was definitely going to fall. But no matter how much Nellie hoped for it, Ryan also had excellent reflexes. Horrified to realize that her plan was going wrong, Nellie wondered why everyone here had such great reflexes. Her human catastrophe was not able to cope with the task of resolution, and even from falling she was saved. What is this duel between spear and shield, or rather, a battle between trouble and quick reaction? Was her plan going to fail this time too? Nellie was disappointed, and the Duke was still waiting. Knocking on the table, he asked how long she was going to stand and ordered her to report. Exactly. Now Nellie remembered another integral part of the visit. When Lionel suddenly asked if she was worried about her assistant, the girl was surprised. And against the backdrop of a general hurricane, he said that this was not so, she was coping, and asked if this was not so. The Duke asked incredulously if she really thought so, and sighed wearily. This gesture, this strange reaction of the Duke, really pleased Nellie. Could it be that, despite the fact that accidents with Lizzie are prevented, he still considers her incapable? Then maybe Nellie would finally see Lionel lose his temper. She couldn't wait. But suddenly the Duke said, "Yes, it definitely got better when she appeared, shattering all dreams." As she said, Lee was a fast calculator and wrote excellent reports, so they could have kept her on for a little while longer. "Oh, well, that's great news," Nellie replied brokenly. She had failed again. After a few days, the girl wondered how she could not succeed at least once in her revenge. Lizzie thanked her, knowing how clumsy she was, but he still sent her to the Duke's estate to work with his assistants. But if Nellie had known that this would happen, she would never have sent her there, and Lizzie was inspired by the general idea of being useful to Miss. What was worse was that Lizzie began to make fewer and fewer mistakes, and even without Aret, things at the estate went smoothly. As a result, he was able to focus on his core responsibilities, and as all this happened, Lionel's reputation grew. "How did all this happen?" Nellie screamed indignantly. She couldn't believe it. But she gets angry when people's lives improve. Somehow it's wrong. It feels like Lionel had a strange influence on her. Nellie needed a change of scenery, and other assistants also suggested that she take a break because she looked tired. But she couldn't do anything about it. It was all because all her plans were going down the drain. But suddenly Nellie remembered that she had dresses given to her by Lionel, which she was going to sell, but forgot. This level of quality simply couldn't lift her spirits, Nellie thought. And then she immediately became interested in how much they cost, especially since this money, that is, these dresses, were from Lionel. But not everything was as rosy as she would like to believe. Now Nellie ran after the boy and told him to stop. She screamed for people to catch this boy. He was a pickpocket and chased after him. He stole all the money she could earn today, so why should she be a victim of a pickpocket? The girl screamed that she told him to stop, but suddenly noticed that he turned into an alley. Nellie did not give up the pursuit of her money, ordered them to give it to her, and threatened. But then the man hiding the boy asked the lady if she was lost or what. I asked her if she wanted her money back, or if she was just saying that because she was still alive. Did he really mean to say that she was in danger of dying? Nellie thought fearfully. She just wanted her money back. A few hours ago, his lordship was informed that the coachman was asking him for a meeting. The Duke ordered him to be let in. The coachman modestly entered the office, greeting the Duke. Lionel asked what had happened. He said timidly that he had just driven Miss Nellie to the shopping district, but something seemed suspicious to him. He said that she had taken an unusually large bag with her and offered to help the girl. Nellie thanked him, saying that she needed to get rid of some things. The coachman thought and suggested what he needed to get rid of, that the bag was so heavy. She said there was something there that needed to be gotten rid of, but he felt like she might have escaped. Everyone was horrified, but then Lizzie screamed that this couldn't be. Miss Nellie wouldn't run away without saying a word. The Duke asked his assistant why she thought so, and Lizzie was confused. But still, having put her thoughts in order, she said that Miss Nellie sincerely cares about the duchy. So, having burst into tears and asked his lordship not to cut off her hands, Lionel was discouraged. Lizzie screamed that they had heard these rumors that if he caught a runaway manager, he would cut off both his hands. Ryan immediately denied what was said, saying that these were just rumors and his lordship would never have resorted to such savagery. But upon hearing of such rumors, Lionel decided that it was not a bad idea, Duke, Ryan shouted. Such jokes will make Miss Lizzie think that he is speaking seriously. Right? Lionel answered. It is just a joke, and asked her to stop crying. But Lionel was still worried about this. Nellie Pepper had only just settled in and begun to win the trust of the residents. There was no evidence that she was stealing documents or money. She did not meet with anyone and did not send letters. If she had been a spy, she would not have left empty-handed. It didn't look like Nellie Pepper had actually escaped. But why then did Lionel feel that he should not sit idly by? He wondered if he would lose control of the situation if she left the area. Ryan said he would send someone to the traders, but Lionel said he would go there himself. He still wanted to get some fresh air. He will go there himself? The man asked again, stunned. Yes, the Duke answered. His lordship ordered the coachman to take him to where he had dropped her off. Yes, of course, the coachman replied. Already on the road, Lionel thought that, to tell the truth, he had no need to go there himself. If she doesn't try to escape, then he will simply consider it an isolated incident and turn a blind eye to it. But if she does try to escape, she will order Arete to make her pay for what she did, however. No, he goes there to check the third version that no one told about. After all, she could have gone to a secret meeting. Yes, that's right, we need to check. And now Nellie met with bandits threatening her, but suddenly, after a cry for help, the bandit fell. Without getting hit, or worse, Nellie opened her eyes in shock. Another man became concerned about his boss's condition, but was then attacked from behind. Having neutralized the opponents, the man exhaled and, snatching the bag, asked the lady if this was what she was looking for, wasn't it? Oh, Lord, thank you. Nellie sincerely thanked the man. This is truly all her money. Thankfully, she reached for the bag, but then the man said, smiling, that he had never said he would return them. She had no instinct for self-preservation, which is perhaps why she ran after this child until the very end. So he's a pickpocket too, Nell thought fearfully, and timidly asked what he wanted. Before he could answer, Lionel rudely ordered Prince Adelaide to stop joking. Lionel, Nellie thought in shock, what is he doing here? And he just said, Prince. The prince said that he would never have thought that he would meet him here. Nellie was shocked that the prince tried to appropriate her money. Taking off his hood, the prince asked the Duke what a high-ranking nobleman like him was doing in these alleys. Lionel frowned and said he thought he should be the one asking about it. And what about him? In comparison to him, who took all the Queen's attention, he's just a domestic dog with a good pedigree. Exactly, replied the Duke, and these backyards are not suitable for pets, unless he is a stray dog. What? Nellie thought in horror, standing between two fires. These two probably have a tense relationship. It would have been nice if he had simply returned the money to her, but in the current situation she had no choice but to take it herself. Snatching the money, she shouted at the Duke that she would take what was hers, and they could continue arguing. And finally, having thanked him, she said that he must win and asked him not to lose. Lionel, who had come here only because of her, rushed after Nellie Pepper, forgetting about the prince. Watching this, Adelaide laughed out loud and asked what was wrong with her. He said her name was Nellie Pepper. Well, what a curious person, thought the prince. Chasing Nellie Pepper, the Duke finally caught her and said that even a snail moves faster. He asked where she was going and how Adelaide knew. Nellie replied that she was seeing this man for the first time and asked what he meant. She was returning to the estate, of course. The Duke explained, "People are saying that she tried to escape. Why?" she asked, and Lionel asked, "So she is not going to?" No, she was going to stay in the duchy. She hadn't even taken her revenge properly yet. She wouldn't leave under any circumstances. Lost in thought, Lionel asked where the bag was. Then he heard that she had taken it with her, a suspiciously large one. "I threw it away," the manager answered awkwardly, and his lordship asked if she had anything to get rid of at all. Nellie didn't do anything wrong, but it's awkward to talk about the dresses lying will only lead to misunderstandings. So, deciding to be honest, she said that she sold the dresses he gave her. She explained that they were too flashy and she considered them more compensation than a gift, and she preferred money rather than dresses, as she was too honest. She was also not sure that she needed so many dresses, so she kept only the most modest ones for herself. Having assessed her point of view and chosen the option of money, the Duke accepted, saying that it sounded reasonable. She convinced him, surprisingly. On returning to the office, Nellie met Sophie and wondered what she was doing, and she asked if this wasn't the plant that Lizzie had killed. Yes, Sophie was wondering if it would come back to life if she watered it. It turns out that Lizzie poured hot tea on it and also threw eggshells into the pot every morning. So she was throwing her food waste into the plant. No, she said that she read in a book that it was good for plants. "And since it didn't work, that means the book was wrong, okay?" answered Nellie. But suddenly a plan appeared in her head. The fields were just beginning to sprout, and if she threw the remains of food onto the fields like Lizzie, she might be able to destroy the harvest. She can easily crush the shells and secretly scatter them across the fields, and if caught, she will say that she read about it in a book. The residents work just as hard. She will protect them, and if successful, Lionel's entire food warehouse will be empty. Perfect. That night she met a guard who asked Miss Nellie what she was doing there at such an hour. Hesitating with her answer, she replied that she wanted to start work earlier at such an hour, he asked. And he asked suspiciously what she had in her hands in that bag was her secret weapon. She asked Tom for a lot of eggshells and ground them finely in vinegar. And finally, she added black tea, and that's how the best plant poison was created, but she couldn't answer like that. She said it was a gift for her assistants. She was very shy, so she wanted to give it secretly. She was worried that her excuse was too weak. She had never come here this early before. But surprisingly, the guard said he would keep her secret. Surprisingly, it worked. But it was quite a long walk from here to the management office, since she could not go by carriage at that time. The guard offered Nellie to take the donkey from the pasture for the ride to the office. Approaching the donkey, Nellie awkwardly asked if he could do her a favor, but he was not in the mood. She asked if he could give her a lift. It would be faster, and in return she would give him a carrot. But suddenly the donkey seemed to go crazy and rearing up began to bray loudly. Nellie thought he was scared because she was a stranger and asked him to be quiet. After all, with such success, other animals will wake up and catch her. Nellie was already crying from not knowing what to do and simply begged the donkey to shut up. But suddenly, yawning and scratching his belly, a young man came out to the girl and asked who she was, if she was a thief. "Excuse me," Nellie said to the guy, wondering who he was anyway. Having calmed the donkey, the guy said that he was usually calm and thought that he was just scared. He asked if she was really the new manager. "Yes, that's right," Nellie answered. The field keeper, Phil, asked what brought her here at such an hour and whether she was trying to steal something. "Of course not. What is he?" Nellie exclaimed worriedly and asked not to be misunderstood. She explained that she needed to go out on official business and asked if he would lend her a donkey. Now, while watering the fields at dawn, Nellie, laughing joyfully, told the donkey that she was in his debt. She decided to dilute the plant poison and spray it. The smell was very strong, so spraying it would be too noticeable. It would also be suspicious if the plants died immediately after her stay in the fields. It was a gamble, but she hoped for the best. The plants Liza killed will confirm this. She begged them to die for her, only quietly and gradually. How soon an invitation for Nellie Pepper from Prince Adelaide appeared on the Duke's desk. Lionel wondered why he did this. She had received a lot of praise from the residents recently. Not only does Nellie take good care of them, but she even understood the Queen's concern for the poor. So it was no surprise to him that someone would want to take her away. Any noble with lands would want a competent manager. However, the prince had no lands, so he did not need a manager. Perhaps, Lionel suggested, he was simply curious about her, or perhaps he needed a capable person by his side. Or maybe they knew each other from the very beginning. It was all suspicious, and upon hearing it, Ryan asked what he was talking about. And noticing the gloomy expression on his face, he hoped that this was not the case. He was not asking about Miss Nellie. What again he asked, the Duke replied that she was behaving very familiarly with him. She is also friends with him, Aretha, Sophie, Tom, Gerald, and Paul. Lionel began to list. Ryan, not understanding what the Duke was getting at, asked if he hadn't already mentioned this. But that wasn't all. Her laughter bothered him, and Ryan was taken aback and asked if Lionel thought there was something wrong with him. He asked if he really wasn't affected by that suspicious laugh. He heard that he had gotten closer to her. Had her thoughts really been transmitted to him, he apologized, but there was some truth in it. Miss Nellie seemed familiar to him too. But that was all. Then Ryan asked if he could say something. He thought that he knew better than anyone that she had nothing to suspect, and asked Lionel if he thought so. The fact that he calls her by her name and not by her position is already proof of this. Until now, he had never called the manager that. Because of his deep wounds from the betrayals of past subordinates, he is especially keen to suspect the manager. Lionel did not want to accept the truth of what was said, and smiling said that it was nonsense. He immediately went to the exit, and Ryan asked where he was going. The Duke replied that he needed to get some fresh air. He thought it didn't make sense. How could he trust Nellie Pepper anymore? It was impossible. Nellie called out to the boy and said that she had come back to return the donkey. She said goodbye to Tikonya until tomorrow. Tikonya, the supervisor asked in surprise. And the manager responded enthusiastically that she had given him the name after spending time with him and realizing that he was quite quiet. The girl explained that she combined the words Tikonya and donkey together, and that's how she got his name. Rolling his eyes, Philia apologetically said that, actually, his name is Vexiadria Laurelius. Vec what? Asked Nellie. Can I just call him Vexy? The young man answered and introduced himself as Philly. She said that she was very pleased to meet him and also said goodbye to Tikonya. The boy said resignedly after the girl that that was not his name. After this, Nellie returned to the office wishing everyone good morning. However, instead of employees, the first thing I saw was a familiar-looking barrel. Oh wait, that was her plant poison, she thought in horror. What was he doing in the office? But then Lionel, whom she had not noticed before, appeared, saying that she had arrived. Before returning the donkey, she sprayed the poison and decided to leave the barrel and cart near the office. And leaving her unattended, she went away to return to Konya. Wait, the girl thought anxiously. Just don't tell her that Lionel saw her leave it near the office. It would be better to discuss this inside, Lionel suggested. Sorry, Nellie thought anxiously. Discuss what? His Grace the Duke said he was afraid the conversation would drag on and coldly ordered them to follow him. Yes, of course, Nellie answered nervously, wondering if he would ask about the barrel. It looked like another failure. To find out why Lionel decided to talk to Nellie, we'll have to go back a bit. Presumably, the manager sprayed this liquid on the fields today, they reported to him. And Lionel asked if she had asked about anything suspicious, so he came to give Nellie the invitation. But he discovered a suspicious barrel opposite the office, and it turned out that he heard the whole story from Lizzie. The girl came to the office on assignment and told everything she saw in the field. Lionel arrived at the management office as soon as the working day began, alarming the employees. It wasn't particularly suspicious, but she had asked him for a huge amount of eggshells about a week ago. She didn't say what she would use them for, but it certainly wouldn't harm their fields, Tom said. Lionel asked why he thought so, and the man answered because Nellie laughed. The Duke asked worriedly if he didn't think there was something sinister hidden behind that laughter. But Miss Nellie's laugh is different, it's true. Only good things always happen when she laughs. That's why they call it a lucky hee-hee or just say she laughed. Lionel asked if they thought it was suspicious, but they didn't understand what he was talking about. The Duke explained that the residents had always been hostile towards the previous governors, but Nellie Pepper was able to win their favor in just a month. Their faith in her was also unwavering, but that was natural. The previous manager treated them like slaves. They never remembered their names and gave them rude nicknames, but Miss Nellie is different, the guards replied. In other words, she gained people's trust because she was kind and hardworking. Still with some doubt, Lionel said that he understood and let the people go. Back to the present, Nellie thought he would ask her about the barrel. However, she received an invitation to the ball. Not to mention that this invitation was from the prince she met in the alley. Nellie said she wanted to clarify that she had no connection with the prince and had no intention of getting to know him better. Lionel replied that he knew from last time. Then why? He interrupted her and asked her to come with him. She intermittently asked Nellie, "To the ball with his lordship, why?" The Duke sighed. He had long noticed that she could not answer without unnecessary questions. He said that in any case going to the ball would do her good. The opportunity to enter high society is not given to just anyone. But Nellie wasn't interested. Lionel thoughtfully asked if she was serious. The girl explained that he had already said that he did not want to get involved with the prince, and that she also had no intention of impressing the nobles. He said he didn't blame her, but her behavior looked strange. "But you can see it in her eyes," Nellie screamed. She was upset that he suspected her at every step. She really tried her best, and still, she wouldn't go. She thought more positively of him. Since he didn't ask about the barrel, then she would have to decline his invitation too, the Duke said. He couldn't go without a partner. "Just look at this. He's showing off terribly." She told him to do what he needed to do. She slammed the door and went out, coming to Tikhon to cry about how unfair it was and asking if he would help her take revenge. Philia didn't expect to see the manager here. The girl said she decided to pop in and see Tikhonya, pleasing herself. The guy thought she really liked Vexi and said that donkeys like to have their ears touched. They have very keen hearing. Nellie noticed that Philia cares a lot about the animals. He works so hard. She heard his contract is ending soon, but she would like him to stay. Everyone who looked after the ranch before Philia was a strange bunch. The faithful blindly believed in folk remedies. The next was a heretic from a neighboring country and was expelled for trying to offer the inhabitants as a sacrifice. Thinking about it, none of them seemed normal. This means that she will have to let such people take care of Tikhon, their brilliant, sweet, and cool donkey. The manager called Philia and asked how much time was left until the end of his contract. The guy answered for about a month, and Nellie asked if he was thinking about extending it, even if it was for Tikhon's sake. To tell the truth, Phil was offered to work for another year, but he refused. "What?" Nellie asked, stunned. "Why?" "Because," he answered, "he was afraid that he would get attached." It reminded Nellie of her childhood. Since her mother abandoned her, she wandered through many places until she found the duchy. The inability to find her place was exhausting, and her desire to find a home grew stronger. But when you continue to suffer from loneliness, you eventually give in. However, this does not mean that you are alone. Perhaps Philia has also given up in his attempts to find his place. "Okay." Nellie made up her mind and, grabbing his hand, said that she understood his feelings. And she promised that she would make sure that he remained in the Duchy of Alterwood no matter what. "It's really not necessary," Phil answered, dumbfounded, but Nellie exclaimed that he wouldn't be alone. She asked to believe her, but heard a sharply negative answer from the Duke. "The ranch caretakers were required to leave when their contracts ended," he replied, which Nellie had not expected. "But there is no such law," said Nellie. "It's a tradition," explained Lionel. The manager asked if they really had to follow traditions. "Not necessarily," the Duke replied. But he asked her to think about why it had become a tradition in the first place. The caretakers were usually wanderers. Their identities are unknown, so keeping them for too long could cause problems. What about her then? She also came from outside, but has a contract for a year. It is difficult to replace managers, so she is an exception, he answered. Besides, where will he stay? The new ranch caretaker will live in that hut. Then Nellie asked to approve a 10-year contract. He already said that he was renewing it. To be honest, she didn't think that he would agree to a lifetime contract, so she suggested this. Lionel said it was only a 1-year extension, but Nellie insisted that the next caretakers would be out of this world. "And he will regret the loss of Philly," Lionel asked warily. Where did such confidence come from? Philia is the same wandering caretaker. He can be just as problematic. She knew for sure that the next few caretakers would be a nuisance, but how to explain it? If she said she saw the future, he would think she was crazy. Why did she always have to try so hard? Couldn't he trust at least once? She sincerely believed that it would be better for the duchy if Philia stayed. She listed her innovations. And she asked if all this had not been for the benefit of the duchy. She believed that by this point he could trust her judgment to some extent. Lionel was sure that all this helped her gain trust. People talk about improving conditions, but that's all. But they haven't seen any benefit yet until the harvest comes in, but the budget has already doubled. And she openly asked him to trust her. Lionel asked if she didn't think that was even more suspicious. Had she relaxed too much, she gained the trust of others faster and easier than in her past life. That's why I thought that with Lionel it would be easier too, at least a little bit, but I was wrong. She said sadly that she had crossed all boundaries. The Duke replied, "If you understand, go." Coming out of the Duke's office, Nellie froze in confusion, sniffling and holding back tears. The manager collected her thoughts. Having collected her snot, this did not mean that she would give up. On the contrary, she will then see who will emerge victorious in this dispute. A month later, Lionel was informed that she had bought a small hut with the money from the sale of dresses. "That's right," Nellie answered joyfully without a bit of regret. Lionel angrily asked if she was defying him by allowing the previous caretaker to live there. "What?" the girl said. No, of course, she didn't understand what he was talking about. Lionel reminded her of the conditions. Yes, he said he had to leave, but now he has a place to live and he pays taxes. The Duke did not throw him out, Nellie interrupted, saying that he was forced to wander because of the prejudices of the forgiveness of the caretakers. He did not renew his contract despite working hard because, he said, it was hard to leave once you got attached. She asked if he really wanted to kick out such a person without reason, just because the contract had ended, the one who had settled in the duchy. Lionel was already getting irritated, and Nellie called him truly heartless and ruthless. So callous, cold-blooded, cruel, and merciless, she asked. If it came to this, she would use an emotional approach. Maybe he would understand, but he was vulnerable to emotional requests. Plus, there were now reasonable excuses about the caretaker's new housing. The Duke, shyly waving the girl away, asked if he knew anything else besides farming. "He doesn't need to worry about that," Nellie replied. They were very lucky that Feely had other skills as well, she convinced the Duke when she said he was knowledgeable in medicine. The manager asked the guy where he learned all this. Philia replied that he simply picked up a few things here and there. Knowledge of herbs and first aid was useful. Philia asked if he could stay because perhaps they didn't yet have a suitable doctor in the duchy, so he will have to help the residents. Then Philia asked if he could ask something. And he asked why Miss was so kind to him. Well, Nellie answered in surprise, they both came from outside. She too, the guy was surprised, and the girl said that she too was tired of constantly wandering from place to place. But suddenly she thought that she had said too much and asked if it was time for the new caretaker to arrive. Oh, and she seemed to notice him nearby. It was the new caretaker named Roman. Watching the man, Nellie wondered why he was looking around so anxiously. And as soon as Roman looked in their direction, Nellie dragged Philia into the bushes, which made the guy think that she had feelings for him. Nellie hissed. It seemed to her that the new caretaker was strange. He continued to look around with suspicion. They noticed that he was holding something in his hands, and Philia, with keen eyesight, began to peer into it. It definitely wasn't paper, but something like a moving lump of dough, which Nellie tensed up. And the next moment she was overcome with horror as a homing pigeon flew over their heads. She came to the Duke with a report that Roman looked suspicious. She saw him release a dove. Lionel asked thoughtfully if there was a letter tied to the paw, but, there was no letter. But she supposed that he could tie it with a pin or stomach, weak evidence. The Duke asked if there was anything else. Nellie mumbled, and Lionel sent her back saying that he understood, and Nellie knew that her words alone were not enough. But she warned that she was saying this just in case, as a manager, and she thought that he would pay attention to it. After all, she was good at being suspicious, Nellie thought as she left the office. She knew she needed more solid proof. Maybe she was making it up, but there was something off about Roman. However, she had a wonderful way, which was called drinking, but she also met Paul. She wanted to know about the new caretaker of the ranch and asked what he was doing there. It turned out that Roman invited Paul for a drink. She noticed, didn't know that they were close, but brought meat, so she offered to eat together. Paul was grateful. Miss Nellie really cared about the people here, so Roman asked if the Duke liked meat dishes. The man replied that he wasn't particularly fond of meat and often left a little on his plate. Nellie thought it was because there was too much meat and he didn't overeat. But he always finished his salad, Paul exclaimed. Perhaps this is to make sure he gets his fill, but in fact he really loves it. Nellie shut up as soon as she remembered the warnings about the possible poisoning of the Duke. She immediately felt uneasy because she had just almost let something slip, setting Lionel up. It doesn't matter, she continued. The Duke will scold her if she says that. Roman chuckled and remarked that Miss Nellie must be close to the Duke. If you think about it, how did she become so friendly so quickly? He might not like it, because the commander is very shy. Or there is something between them, he teased the girl. Of course, Nellie answered seriously. What Paul asked in a drawn-out tone and then enthusiastically asked if she was serious. And this mistrust, the manager said irritably, nothing but mistrust between her and Lionel. She was irritated just by the thought of it and, drinking her beer, asked for more. After a while, she fell asleep like a log. The Duke asked if she always got drunk until she was completely exhausted, although he wasn't even surprised. To his comrade's surprise, Lionel ordered the manager's bed to be prepared. And then, remembering Paul, he invited him to come with him for a conversation. Yes, yes, the man agreed, thinking that the Duke was not the type to care for someone like she did. From the conversation, Lionel found out that they were just drinking together, but he did not understand why she came there if she considered the man suspicious. Paul had something to say about the caretaker. He reported to the commander, and the Duke ordered him to speak. He seemed suspicious while they were drinking and kept asking sensitive questions about him, and he accidentally mentioned his eating habits, that he eats salad, apologizing for it. "It's okay, just don't let Ryan find out," Lionel replied. "He'll be mad if he finds out he messed everything up. They must be careful after he leaves. If he is smart, he will wait for the knights to let their guard down." Paul noticed that the Duke did not seem surprised about this, and Lionel explained that Nell, that is, the manager, had already reported him. To be honest, Lionel decided to admit he didn't trust her and the ranch caretaker, and she looked suspicious. In response to this, Paul grinned thoughtfully, remembering how the Duke worried about her and how Nellie herself spoke of him. And with a smile, he answered the commander that it seemed to him that he already trusted her. "Nonsense," Lionel replied, frowning. While walking, the Duke asked Paul if he wanted to return to the knights. "No," he answered. Paul was 14 years older than him, and in a couple of years he would be 40. Would there be any point in his return? Lionel asked if he had lost his sword, and Paul modestly asked the gentleman about the same thing. It was bold to answer a question with a question, but Paul was no longer a knight and simply asked to let him rest. Lionel suddenly thought, what if he lost the sword, and suddenly remembered how he killed a friend several years ago. "No way," he said, raising his head sadly. "And he too," Paul replied. Besides, farming had its advantages. "Thanks for everything, Miss Nellie." Lionel had already heard enough praise from the manager. "No one says such things without a reason. It means he trusts her a little," said the knight. "No," Lionel answered. "People are too fanatical about her." Smiling, Paul said, "It's because he is too oppressive. Everyone who works there knows that they are constantly being watched and that they have a lot of work. They all know it's for the good of the duchy, but in truth it's stifling. People blindly trust the manager because she gave everyone a break." True, thought Lionel, Nellie Pepper had won everyone's confidence, and that confidence was due to the fact that she was different from him. He remembered Ryan's words that until now he had called her by something other than her rank, and wondered what about him. He always questioned Aretha about Ryan's suspicious behavior and vice versa, making sure they looked out for each other. But does this mean that he is afraid of betrayal on their part? Of course not, but a terrible voice in his head kept asking him if he really believed them, calling him a fool. There was no one in this world he could trust, and without getting enough sleep he jumped up from the nightmare he saw. He knew in his head that they would never betray him, and he mocked the dreams, but until he confirmed this fact repeatedly. He couldn't get rid of his anxiety and continued to monitor and receive information about the people around him. After many years of such a life, it became a habit, he justified himself, but the reality was different, and he understood that. Paul asked the commander to be kinder to the manager before she decided to run away. People like her are very hard to find. He asked to listen to the advice of someone who knew what it was like to lose someone dear to him. He should appreciate them while he still could. But he and the manager were not on the same terms as he was with his wife, and at that moment Paul laughed. He spoke from the perspective of a man who had lost a capable subordinate, not one who had lost a loved one. But if he thought about it first, it means that he is subconsciously protecting her. The Duke, calming Paul down, asked if he was on his way home. "Yes, he's already on his way," the man answered. Watching him go, Lionel wondered if he would regret it if he lost her. First of all, there is no relationship to lose. She always looks at him. He is angry, she has obvious hostility. How could he trust such a person? Well, Nellie Pepper is indeed a skilled worker. Perhaps we should be more lenient with her. Finding herself in Lionel's office, Nellie could not believe that there were so many books there that the Duke had collected himself. She asked if it was okay that he brought her here secretly, and the butler explained that getting a pass to the library was more difficult. And into the office, please. But what interested her? Why exactly the office? She thought. As the manager of the estate, she knew too little about agriculture, but this was only an excuse. The butler said that this was commendable, asked her not to light candles and to be careful with the lamp. Nellie understood everything. But her true purpose was to carry out a new plan, and on her death the queen gave the seeds of a foreign plant to the duchy. Her intention was to grow the seeds and use them as a new food source. But no one ever managed to germinate the seeds, only Lionel, and so he received the queen's praise. Naturally, he didn't tell her how he managed to get the sprout, because he didn't trust her then or now. However, it didn't matter. This time she was going to make sure they never grew up. She had already given up because her plan for revenge kept failing, and now Roman didn't want to lend her the gear. It had been several days since she could spray the plants with poison. Fortunately, Lizzie reminded her of this. And this time, instead of creating a random plant poison, she will diligently study the books and find the best way. That night, Lionel told Ryan that Paul said Roman had started acting suspiciously. Ryan asked if Aret had been following Roman. The Duke explained that yesterday the manager, Paul, and Roman were drinking together. He said that Roman constantly asked questions about him, but there were other suspicious things too. If they send a knight there now, they will be able to catch him and ask the Duke what he would order to do. If they scare him off, they won't know who's behind it, Lionel replied. Then should they use torture? Ryan asked. The Duke frowned. The birds singing in the mornings was enough, but the shouting of people was missing as well. Even if it took some time, he would like to sort things out peacefully. Then he suggested leaving him alone. If they spread rumors and just watched, they would be able to find out who sent him. It sounded good, but who could they use? Suggesting Miss Nellie, who would be perfect for this task. The Duke thought that if he let his guard down, he might confess to something interesting. Roman is a spy, so Lionel didn't know what kind of training he had received. If she were to get involved in something dangerous while she was so weak, Ryan asked if he was worried about Miss Nellie now. Lionel, irritated, asked if he was going to bother him with this, and the assistant apologized, holding back his laughter. The Duke said to let Paul handle it, and Ryan smiled and agreed. Perhaps there was a chance that Miss Nellie could change the Duke, the man thought. Naturally, while studying books on gardening, Nellie fell asleep closer to midnight, and Lionel was no longer surprised when he saw her sleeping in unfamiliar places. He became interested in what she was reading and picked up the book, reading the title. The book was called Theory and Practice of Growing Special and Rare Crops. But suddenly he shuddered, seeing that Nellie had woken up. Nellie asked his lordship in shock what he was doing here. He asked what he was doing in his own office. "Oh no," answered Nellie. She just came here without an invitation." Lionel said he had already heard it from Roger, Mr. Roger, and he said he would keep it a secret. But then the Duke said that she could study here whenever she wanted, and the manager asked if he was serious. The Duke asked if she wasn't there to study crop cultivation. Actually, yes," Nellie answered awkwardly, and then Lionel asked what the problem was. And he also said that regarding what people say in the square in taverns, she no longer needs to do that. "This means she no longer has to watch the residents?" Nellie asked in disbelief. "True," the Duke confirmed. The girl thought that Lionel had eaten something questionable today, or that he no longer needed her. She asked worriedly if he was going to fire her, and if he did, there would be a riot, the Duke explained. Then, the girl anxiously asked why she could suddenly stop being followed, and after a pause, Lionel admitted that he had been told that he was oppressing people and strangling them. And coming closer, he asked if she thought the same. Nellie trembled, and her heart began to beat faster. Lionel was too close. Oh, why was he so handsome? Like a statue, the girl thought, and, completely forgetting about the question, answered, "Yes." Yes, the Duke got angry, and Nellie immediately exclaimed no, realizing that she had answered without thinking. Even more alarmed, she said that she had been thinking about something else, and that it was not what she had meant. "Enough excuses?" Lionel asked. There was nothing more surprising about it. But he also asked Nellie not to rush and tidy up the office before leaving. Feeling something strange after meeting Lionel, Nellie thought she didn't hurt his feelings. The next day, Roman said that she could take Tikon for herself. He realized that he had been too strict with her. The new caretaker said that she could not only take him, but also visit him whenever she wanted. The manager thanked him with disbelief, since he had been too strict before. The girl thought intensely about why he had changed his attitude towards her. The tension grew as Roman suggested they have a cup of tea inside to celebrate. The man had many questions for her, especially about the Duke. Nellie wondered anxiously what he was trying to do, whether spies always collected information so openly. He seemed too clumsy. If he were a real spy, he would not have sent a carrier pigeon so openly. But if he is not a spy, then why was he so interested in Lionel? Suddenly bright thoughts came into Nellie's head, and she, shocked by her own thoughts, thought for a second, could it be that he had fallen in love with Lionel? Maybe she was short-sighted all this time. Even someone like her, full of grievances, can sometimes be charmed by him. From this, Nellie could imagine how handsome he seemed to Roman, who did not hold a grudge against him. The other villagers fear Lionel because they know what he's like, but Roman hasn't been here long enough to see his personality. The manager, absorbed in her dreams, asked if he was by any chance, but Roman interrupted and said that he respected the Duke. "Fell in love?" asked Nellie. "Is it respect?" Roman answered gloomily. "Okay, Mr. Roman," the girl thought. She understood that this could be a sensitive topic for him. But in any case, it was time for her to go to work, and she wished Roman good luck. The man, discouraged by Mrs. speculations, said after her that it was not what she thought. A few hours later, Philia ran into the office, anxiously calling for Miss Nellie. The girl asked the current doctor of the duchy what happened and why he was running. "It's urgent," Philia exclaimed, and asked if he could take the key from the warehouse. She asked what had happened. A wolf entered the village and bit a villager, so he needed some herbs from the warehouse. Once there, Philia washed the wound with clean water. All that was left was to apply some herbs, and then everything would heal quickly. Thank God they arrived on time. Nellie breathed a sigh of relief. She was worried because Philia looked scared. He heard a wolf come down here, and suddenly a familiar voice was heard from behind. Lionel arrived in the village and soon discovered that they were roasting meat in a homemade oven. The wolves probably came here by the smell. The man said that he was very sorry. He really was cooking meat there. They know that using unequipped stoves for cooking is prohibited. The boy admitted his mistake, and so the Duke ordered him to be taken to the estate. "No, Your Grace," the old woman suddenly cried out. If her son made a mistake, it is only her fault that she did not teach him better. She asked the Duke to punish her better. Her son shouted at his mother not to do it. The woman was old and frail, but she was not afraid to stop the Duke to protect her son. And her mother, Nellie, felt sad, remembering how she exchanged her for her happy life. Then Nellie stood up for both of them and asked Lionel why they didn't listen to them first. The Duke seemed to expect Nellie to intervene, but he was still puzzled. He had heard enough already, but if she was so concerned, she could join the proceedings. The boy appeared in court before the Duke, Ryan and Nellie, who had joined them, and Lionel asked why he had broken the law. The guy knew it was too late to talk, but they wanted to have a little party in honor of Miss Nellie. They had gotten so much from her. So they were planning to throw a surprise party as a thank you, but they thought they would get caught if they used the shared stove. "But they know why it is forbidden to cook meat in homemade ovens?" the Duke asked. They thought that everything would be fine, since the wolves had not come down for a long time, but because of them, a man also suffered. He had broken the law and endangered his neighbors. Lionel asked what punishment he would receive. Opening the reference book, Ryan coldly explained that they would cut off his hands. "Hands!" Nellie thought in horror. "How old is this law? It's not even funny." Or he could pay a fine of an incredibly onerous amount, even astronomical, Nellie noted. The guy who broke the rules, in horror, said that he would rather give them his wrists. But then Nellie interrupted them, screaming, asking them to wait, and that cutting off their hands was too cruel. There have been many cases where people have died from blood loss, which is practically a death sentence. The Duke listened to her in silence but did not give any answer. At this time, Arete brought the resident about whom his lordship had asked. The Duke, turning to the man, said that he must have heard about the situation on the way here and asked him to tell him what happened. The boy answered, "They told him not to do it, but he tried to stop the wolf and it bit him when he tried to run away." Mr. Carlson was just trying to help prepare the surprise party, and that's the truth. After some thought, Lionel ordered the boy to be locked up without water for 2 days and then released. Imprisonment, usually such a light punishment, was only given to high-ranking people. Nellie couldn't believe that Lionel punished him so easily and thanked him for listening to her. "It was a sensible decision," Lionel replied, "and if he had liked bloodshed, he would have been on the battlefield." Nellie looked after him, bewildered, as if she had not understood what the Duke wanted to say. And 2 days later, his friends were already congratulating Carlson on the fact that he appeared in court with his hands intact. They said he should thank Miss Nellie, and so again they tried to thank her, but she helped them again. The guy proudly said how wonderful she was, stopped right in front of the Duke and said, "There were many cases where people died from blood loss. It was practically a death sentence. It was amazing." His friend said that he was right. Rona really was an amazing person and she was still so young. Roman thought she was just lucky to get the job, but she was highly trusted in society. And she even convinced the Duke to soften the punishment. It seems she really is eloquent. Come to think of it, Nellie Pepper had been suspicious of him from the start. She also didn't let Paul speak, not thinking that if all this was a trap by Nellie Pepper, it was very dangerous for him. He thought about the man in the shadows and about himself as well. A friend asked Carlson if they found out. "No," the guy replied. "They know that Miss Nellie likes to do everything secretly." He prepared. He began joyfully, but then Roman asked what she was doing that was so specific. Noticing Roman, the guys invited him to sit with them and have a drink. Since he had not been here long, he might not have known, but Miss Nellie liked to do good deeds in secret. Recently, she has been bringing the donkey to the field at dawn and spraying the crops with some kind of liquid. They saw it and hid until she finished, and now they learned that almost everyone does this. Everyone laughed, and Roman understood why she wanted to borrow the donkey so much, but how could they know that it was a good deed? The crops in the fields she visits look better than in others, and at this rate the harvest could be greater than last year. It's amazing that such a liquid exists, but even more amazing that she sprays it on the fields. Roman asked what kind of liquid it was, but they didn't know, and the man didn't get the joke. The boys explained that she gets embarrassed when she realizes she's been caught and stops, so they pretend they don't see her. It's actually quite interesting. She sprays some mysterious liquid, but the Duke turns a blind eye to it. Don't they think the Duke has changed a lot since Miss Nellie arrived and the soldiers patrolling the village have disappeared? And most importantly, this guy still has hands. Everything is going worse than he thought, Roman thought in horror. The young man asked if he was okay, and Roman replied that he had just remembered that he needed to do something and left. If the manager knew who he was from the very beginning, then the Duke already knew about it. There is only one reason why he would leave the spy unattended: to feed him false information and track down whoever is behind him. He immediately sat down to write a letter. They were trapped. Duke Alterwood knew from the very beginning that he was a spy. All the information he had sent so far was false and provided by the Duke himself. He wanted to warn, but suddenly stopped if it was true. Then he had achieved nothing. Would his employer really save a useless pawn like him? He'd be lucky if he didn't get killed. In the letter, he accused the duchy's land manager, Nellie Pepper, as the one behind it all. She has an incredible ability to irritate troublemakers and influence the Duke with her eloquence. If he needed to, he could find out more about Nellie Pepper, he wrote and sent the letter. The next morning, the Duke summoned Nellie, deciding that he would leave the foreign harvest to her. Hearing this, the girl momentarily fell out of reality, as if paralyzed. She asked her, dumbfounded, if he hadn't asked someone else to do this in her past life. Lionel explained that he had thought she had been interested in rice before, just as Nellie had thought. He called the name of the culture as rice, raise, do. It's somehow strange, and she nervously replied that she had been interested earlier. She wasn't studying cultivation, but was looking for ways to cause root rot, but she couldn't tell him about that. The title of the book was ironic, because it contained all the ways to make plants grow well. Remembering all the recommendations she had read, she realized that she would do the opposite: plant the seeds thickly and water them. That had been her plan, but now she said it was a little too much for her. There was no need to think like that, Lionel encouraged her. No one had ever succeeded in that before. Wait, so no one succeeded, and yet the previous person in charge was not punished. And since this was so, then of course Nellie exclaimed that she would do it and asked to rely on her. This time she will have a great opportunity, she must try, laughing ominously again. But the question arose of how to deliver water there. He and Lionel had already decided where the field would be located. But suddenly there was a knock at the manager's office and Roman entered, asking Miss Nellie if she had a minute. Nellie did not refuse the worker's request, and, sitting down, Roman asked to be allowed to ask directly. And warily, as if preparing for something terrible, he asked the girl how much she knew about him. What kind of question is this? The girl thought, dumbfounded. He is loved, that is, she corrected herself, meaning that he respects his lordship. Roman growled in irritation. That's how she wanted to play. Okay, then why did she come to the Duchy of Alterwood? Nellie thought she should have asked this and replied that she needed a job with room and board, and that the salary was good. It turns out that if she is offered a better salary and a place to live elsewhere, she will consider moving. Roman asked this because the answer had come to him not long ago. In it, his employer wrote that if he couldn't get Nellie Pepper on their side, he should kill her and leave. Completely unaware of the reason the caretaker was asking this question, she asked what? Roman reported that there was a good opportunity to get a job with higher pay than in the Duchy of Alterwood. If the work is good, why doesn't he take it for himself, but offers it to her? It's impossible. Right, now everything came together piece by piece. Nellie found the answer to her question. Not so. When she asked to borrow her a donkey, Roman declined the request, fearing that it would not work. As a simple ranch caretaker, it would be problematic for him if it was revealed that he had feelings for the Duke. So he begged Miss Nellie to leave the duchy, allowing him to be near the Duke. She thought he was trying to get rid of her so that she wouldn't interfere with his unrequited love. In horror, she asked Mr. Roman to wait, saying that she thought he had misunderstood something. She didn't tell his secret to anyone, didn't tell the Duke, he asked, thinking, didn't tell him that he was a spy. I asked Nellie in surprise why she should say this, thinking why she should say that he was in love with him. But he thought he knew, Roman exclaimed, so he assumed that she had already told him, of course, that he was a spy. It seems he misunderstood the situation. He would have immediately driven him away if he found out, speaking of his love for him. If he found out, Roman concluded gloomily, everything would end badly. Nellie thought that he was thinking they would kill him if they found out. But Lionel is not so cruel and told Mr. Roman that she did not have any positive feelings for the Duke. So she asked him to be sure that she would keep his secret until the end. And then she ran away, and Roman wanted to stop the girl, realizing that something was wrong here. A few days later, Nellie was exhausted and came up with a plan to prevent a good harvest. It's good that the seeds were sown compactly back then, and the water was led straight to the field. The only problem was laying out the channel itself. Digging it myself was already tiring. But she had to work nights to keep it a secret, so she had no choice but to cut back on sleep. At least she had a donkey with which she could travel and even sleep on it if she wanted. Suddenly, Tikhon snorted, and Nellie thought that by this he wanted to tell her to get off. But only after getting off the donkey did she realize that he had brought her not to the Western Tower, but to the main building. She tried to stop the fleeing Tikhon, but suddenly something dawned on her. Lionel lived in the main building, so this was a good opportunity. As she knocked on Lionel's room, she thought that there are times when no one wants to be disturbed. I asked him if he was sleeping, thinking what normal person would want to be visited in the middle of the night. Just in case, she thought about telling him that she needed to talk about Reese, so it wouldn't look suspicious. She hated looking bad from a week without sleep, while Lionel looked fine. But then Lionel came out to Nellie and asked what had happened. When she saw the man's open torso, the girl was horrified. Blushing from awkwardness and embarrassment, she wondered why he came out looking like that, and said that she wanted to talk about something. And she asked him to tie her robe, which he noticed only after she said why this happens when she relaxes. Entering the room, Lionel asked Nellie where she came from. He noticed dirt in her hair, and the manager gasped in surprise. She said hesitantly that she was working in the fields and checking that everything was okay with the rice. It was definitely mud from the riverbank, and she hoped he wouldn't notice, but Lionel noticed that she was riding a donkey. How did he know? She asked, stunned. Was he really following her? But he replied, because she had donkey hair on her. Nellie thought for a second that he had sent Arita to follow her again, she admitted awkwardly. After a pause, Lionel asked if she really thought he was that kind of person, eh? Never mind. As he sat down, he asked what she wanted to discuss. Oh yes, about Reese. She thought that perhaps it was not growing well because of the climate. Maybe they should research the climate of its natural environment. But he was growing up in a small, faraway country, so that could be problematic, she realized. By the way, I thought it would be a great idea to build roads, and I also thought that it would be possible to keep animals together. The Duke asked if she proposed building a barn, as that would indeed be easier. But Nellie only wanted to see Lionel tired because he still looked good. Lionel said that they are starting to make barns in the capital too. He will think about it. But suddenly he noticed that Nellie was starting to nod off, falling asleep on the go. Seeing this, he called out to the manager, but at that very moment she fell forward. "Be careful," he exclaimed, picking up the girl and sitting her down in a stable position. Was she really so tired that she fell asleep during the conversation, and what was she thinking about? That same night, Roman's employer received word from him that Nellie Pepper would keep his secret, and he flew into a rage, saying that if he did not win her over to their side, he would immediately order them to get rid of her. In the last days of Nellie's brutal life, she ended with a visit to Lionel's room. By the time she finishes working on the channel, dawn has already broken. And it was the perfect time to bother someone trying to sleep, and Lionel kept opening the door for her. But the problem was that she was also suffering from lack of sleep. The Duke said that she looked unwell, asked if she was overdoing it. She should go and rest, which Nellie wondered could not happen. She must detain him so that he could not sleep. Lionel asked her to hurry and asked if he should carry her to the room himself. But suddenly their midnight meetings were discovered by the butler, who, after clearing his throat, asked for forgiveness. He heard a noise coming from here and came to check, asking why Miss Nellie was here at such an hour. Lionel said they had a thorough discussion about territorial governance for several days, and Nellie confirmed this. As he saw Miss off, the butler said that he was apparently getting old, still hoping that his lordship had found a partner. The partner, choking with surprise, asked Nellie in surprise. The man apologized for his bluntness and for the reaction he had earlier. He thought he was getting a little ahead of himself, and Nellie began to think about Lionel's partner. She would be lying if she said her heart never fluttered for him. After all, Lionel is incredibly handsome, and she was quite close to him before his death. However, she answered the butler that she was not his partner. All this processing had swept away any feelings for him over the years. Still not losing hope, he replied, "We'll live and see what awaits them." And he also thanked Miss Nellie, even if it was not so. For what? The girl asked. In fact, he admitted, his lordship had not been able to sleep properly since he had given up his observation. But she kept him company, so he was grateful. It hurt. This was not what Nellie wanted to achieve. In the morning, she felt just as bad she hadn't slept well. At least it was good that she had a day off today, but for some reason she didn't stay asleep. Suddenly, on the way, she noticed a familiar figure and, calling out to Philia, asked if he had returned. "Oh, Miss Nellie." He recognized the girl by her head and turned around, but suddenly saw the girl in a deplorable state. He immediately rushed to her with concern and asked anxiously if something had happened while he was gone. He shouted that she looked terrible, and he also noticed people digging a canal. He shouted that she needed to work less the channel, the girl thought in horror, and she timidly asked what they were digging. Arriving at the place and seeing the river flowing, she wondered how it happened. Miss Nellie was called by the boy she had saved, and she asked in shock how it had happened. The guy asked proudly but shyly, did they think they didn't know that she was digging a canal here alone? It turned out that these people were secretly helping her, he reported, which she thought in horror. Although, unsurprisingly, she caught herself thinking that the canal looked a bit too fancy. But now Nellie was worried that they would also get into trouble for helping her dig the canal, although they had done nothing wrong. She wanted to talk to them, but suddenly she felt very tired. She asked them not to worry if something went wrong. Yawning, she said that if anything happened, she would take full responsibility, but then a familiar voice called her. She looked back, realizing it was Lionel, but for some reason everything in front of her eyes became so blurry. Lionel asked if she was okay. Nellie thought she was not as tired as before she died. She was about to answer that everything was fine, but then she staggered and the Duke rushed towards her. Lionel managed to catch her before she fell to the ground, and the villagers also became alarmed. Lionel ordered someone to bring a carrier or call the former caretaker of the fields. "No need," Philia exclaimed. He was already on his way. But suddenly the guy's eyes widened. He saw Miss Nellie, and the Duke asked if he was familiar with herbs and medicines. And he explained to the local doctor that she suddenly fell down without strength. She was breathing, her heart was beating, but there was no temperature. Philia said that he would examine her and approached the girl, finding out what was wrong with her. After some time, Lionel asked how she was. Philia remained silent for a while, but after a pause he said, "It looks like Miss Nellie is just sleeping." "Seriously?" Lionel asked. The question was even visible in his expression. Having carried her into the room, Philia said that it looked like she was just sleeping and thought that she had overworked herself and fainted from exhaustion. And in conclusion, he said that now she needed rest, and tomorrow she would not be able to get up. The Duke asked what he meant, and the guy explained that her muscles were very tense, that she fell into a deep sleep, releasing all the tension at once. Her whole body will hurt, as if she had been beaten by 5 big men. Lionel couldn't believe that she was just sleeping. He was so worried that she lost consciousness. But I wasn't sure whether I should feel relieved. She was smart, of course, but too demanding of herself. His lordship called out to Ryan anxiously, informing him that the rice fields were flooded and he needed to go there. And regarding this, Lionel answered calmly, he was sure that Nellie Pepper did it. Will they really leave everything like this, he asked. The plants will rot because of the abundance of water, and he himself knew this. Not quite so, the Duke answered, contradicting his assistant. Rice is an aquatic plant. He led her into his office, and it seemed she had read a book on the theory and practice of growing special and rare crops. According to the book, rice required a lot of water to grow, he explained. Although in fact, for Nelia this book was so abstruse that she abandoned it after a couple of pages. When he looked into the book himself, he learned that the rice grew in clumps, which was what Nellie Pepper had originally ordered the workers to do. Did that mean she knew how to get the harvest? Ryan asked, but then Aret came running in worriedly. He reported a fire on the eastern edge of the village and a pack of wolves that had appeared from the western side. Upon hearing the news, the men froze in horror. The Duke immediately asked if there were any casualties, but Aret explained that they were still assessing the situation. He ordered Ryan to lead the firefighting effort and Aretha to lead the wolves and join the firefighting effort. His subordinates asked his lordship where he was going, and Lionel replied that he needed to make sure of something. Fire and wolves at the same time. It even sounded like an unnaturally perfect coincidence. Especially on the day Nellie Pepper fainted if she is a spy. She will definitely take advantage of the confusion and take the next step, even if suspicion falls on her. She might be able to claim she was bedridden, but if she's still in the room, she's unlikely to be a spy. He entered the room and breathed a sigh of relief when he found Nellie sleeping restlessly. At least, Lionel thought, he was now sure that she had nothing to do with what had happened. Suddenly I heard some noise outside the window and noticed a man's hand appearing on the windowsill. And he immediately hid, watching what would happen, recognizing the person who had come. Roman said that he didn't feel any ill will towards her, but even if he couldn't, they would still try to kill her. As if it would be better for her to die at his hands now, he swung a dagger at the sleeping woman. But suddenly, the dagger was knocked out of his hands, and they were put behind his back. He is the ranch caretaker, said the Duke, and he asked if his name was Roman. The man winced in pain and fear of being discovered. He menacingly explained that if he answered his questions honestly and calmly, he would not kill him. Lionel's first question was whether the wolves and the fire were his doing, but Roman gritted his teeth. Cutting through the skin, Lionel threateningly asked if he was tired of living. The man trembled, and he exclaimed that he would answer and confessed that he had started the fire and lured the wolves with meat. Why? Asked the Duke. To enter Nellie Pepper's room, Roman answered, asking why he should enter her room. He was ordered to kill her. She was too smart and was interfering with their plans. He even promised to tell them that he was ordered to do this. But to Roman's horror, Lionel already knew who was behind all this, and goosebumps ran down his body. He was interested in something else, but this was not the right place for conversation. Nellie had a dream, and in it was the very dessert that she gave to Lionel during dinner. And judging by the way he spoke, it was Lionel. Nellie was right, but why does she see it again? Is she really going to die again? Lionel screamed. She knew she was going to die. But suddenly she became wary, wondering whether it was really a dream or whether she had seen something she had missed. Lionel continued to call Nellie Pepper anxiously, and she became convinced that it really was just a dream. Otherwise, she thought, Lionel would not have been so saddened by her death. He was ordered to report on the general state of the territory, and recently he was instructed to persuade Nellie to join them. She is a valuable employee, so they wanted to recruit her first. Lionel asked if she agreed. No, answered Roman, but she shared something important. And what it was, the Duke asked. She said that they were not on the best terms with him, and that she did not like him. Luckily, Lionel already knew this and asked the man to say something more substantial. Having said that she had promised not to reveal that he was a spy, the Duke asked if he suspected that Nellie Pepper was also a spy. He had thought about it, Roman replied, and Lionel realized that he didn't know the full story, reporting that Nellie was the first to say that he was a spy. Roman was horrified and completely devastated. Judging by his expression, he had nothing to say. He would have to thank her when he left here. After questioning him, Lionel understood that he shouldn't constantly doubt her. After this, the Duke asked Ryan to change the schedule so that they would now receive reports once a month, instead of once every 3 days. Ryan asked about the reason for such a drastic change. Lionel seemed to answer, "It's a burden for Nellie Pepper." He asked if he hadn't said that he would never extend the reporting period to prevent managers from wasting land. "Simply," Lionel answered after a pause, "it will be better for everyone." Ryan smirked and the Duke frowned and asked what. Ryan cleared his throat and admitted that he didn't expect him to reduce the workload simply because he found it burdensome for Nellie. If a talent like her were to leave due to work overload, it would be his fault, the Duke replied, and the assistant forced a smile. Lionel, getting angry, told him to leave, and the man, laughing, said that he would be gone for a while. Left alone, Lionel sighed in embarrassment, thinking that she should already be awake. Maybe he should check on her. At this time, Nellie was dying from pain in every part of her body. The Duke, who came to visit her, carefully told the girl not to move. The girl was very surprised that the Duke had come here and jumped up and asked what he was doing. But suddenly her face twisted from the pain in her back. Lionel reminded her that he had told her not to move. He told the patient that she had a high fever the previous night and asked how she was feeling now. "It was as if she had been beaten by 5 people in an hour," Nellie admitted, crying. "What amazing accuracy," the Duke noted. "What?" she asked, and he explained that it was the diagnosis of the former ranch caretaker. Or should he just call him the caretaker now? What the girl asked, stunned, "Why is Philia the ranch caretaker, and what about Mr. Roman?" "And she still doesn't know," Lionel asked and explained that Roman was a spy, which Nellie cried out in shock. In any case, since she was right, he thought she deserved a reward. He heard that she often took Vexiadrius Laurelius with her. Lionel said that he would give it to her, and from that moment on she could take it without permission. She had taken it without permission before, Nellie thought, but perhaps she shouldn't have said that. The girl asked if she could take him with her if she left the area, and the Duke, after a pause, asked sadly if she planned to leave. The butler asked if anything good had happened, noting that he was in a good mood today. "There are a few," groaned the only Prince Adelaide, "a few wonderful thoughts." They were the account manager of the Duchy of Alterwood. He wondered what she was thinking when she declined his invitation. But after he heard about her from Edward a few weeks ago, it became even more interesting. The prince asked him that day why he came in through the window. "He looked pretty cool," he replied. Smiling, Adelaide said questioningly that he was still like a cog in the hand. Turning to Edward Phillips, he had not heard from him for so long that he thought he had changed his mind. "Of course not," Edward replied, informing the prince that another spy from another location had been caught and that security was now tighter. Then he thought that another way of communication might be needed, so he was here. Well, they could talk about that later, but right now Adelaide was interested in something else. And he asked about Lionel's manager, about what kind of person she was. "The manager of Alterwood," asked Phil. "That's true," the prince confirmed, saying that he had met her by chance in the city's alleys, and she seemed interesting to him, and he also noticed that she was close to Lionel. Rolling his eyes, Edward thoughtfully admitted that he honestly couldn't understand her. "She doesn't like the Duke, but she works hard and everything she does is brilliant, for example," the prince asked. She developed a soil-improving spray for fields, and he thought the yield would increase by about 15%. In addition, she hired specialists, which significantly increased the efficiency of the work. The employees almost idolized her. Now Adelaide wondered what he should do. The more he heard about her, the more he wanted to have her for himself. So he became immersed in thoughts about whether he should take her away from Lionel. Half-blood Prince Adelaide is a distant relative of the royal family who lost his parents in childhood. And the only one who extended a helping hand was the Queen herself, offering him to become her son. The reason the Queen approached him was simple: she and the King had no children. Thus Adelaide became the son of the Queen, but his life as a prince was not serene. The royal couple wanted the perfect heir, but despite Adelaide's best efforts, he was unable to satisfy them. Meanwhile, Lionel, who had shown outstanding courage on the battlefield, easily won the title of the queen's favorite. Like a mother, she tenderly praised Lionel and said that she was proud of him. So Adelaide's adopted son found himself in the past. He thought that he shouldn't have played with Lionel as a child. If he hadn't, he would have gone unnoticed. It was almost inevitable that Adelaide began to see Lionel as his enemy. The girls approached His Highness and offered to talk, confident that they could relieve his boredom. But the prince worriedly apologized to the miss, saying that he had to return soon. He noticed this look time and time again, as if someone saw a thoroughbred stallion in him. And all this is because of what Her Majesty said: he must marry to be recognized as the crown prince. But what is the point of such a confession? What was the point of all the efforts he put in then? The efforts he made to be recognized as the heir. He did not want to inherit the throne, but to deserve it. If he succeeds, then capable people will be drawn to him, the prince thought. This is befitting a king. So, if Lionel's manager was competent, then he could simply take her by force. Back to the conversation, Lionel asked Nellie if she was going to leave. The manager wondered excitedly why he made such an expression on his face. "No," Nellie answered. "Where should she go? She just thought she would be thrown out for what she did. What does she mean?" he asked. And, as if reading Nellie's thoughts, Lionel asked if she meant the canal. He hit the target right on target, and Nellie thought she was finished, but she had nowhere to go, and the Duke asked if she did it on purpose. He explained that rice thrives in water and grows well in groups, something he thought she knew, but she had no idea. And she thought in horror that if she told the truth, they might cut off her head. Of course, she lied that she read it in a book. The Duke praised her courage in this matter. Nellie laughed nervously and said that she was inclined to be bold, in fact, hoping that he didn't know about what she had sprayed on the plants. And then, just in time, Lionel asked what she had sprayed the field with before she made the channel. He knows, how sweet. Crying, she asked how he knew. It couldn't be, Lionel answered, so that he wouldn't know when she was so noisy. She was sure that no one would find out. Oh no, he knew about that too. She was definitely finished. But the next question sent her over the edge. He said it was amazing and asked how she came up with the idea. He meant the liquid fertilizer she made, Lionel explained. Fertilizer? The girl thought in amazement. She was the one who sprayed the plants with poison. People did use tea leaves as fertilizer, but he didn't expect tea water to be so effective. It used to take a lot of time to grind eggshells into powder, but thanks to this, they won't have to worry about that anymore. So what she was doing all this time was not poison, but fertilizer. But why then did the planted tree die? Philia entered the room, announcing that he had brought muscle pain medication from La Carreras. Lionel asked if it was a poison that caused paralysis. It was safe, answered Philia. If the poison is highly diluted, then in such a dosage it was used as a painkiller. Listening to this, Nellie thought, it's interesting, so if you dilute the poison, it will turn into medicine. And then the full truth of Phil's words reached her. Only now, but at least now, she understood why she had failed. The water was to blame. She diluted the plant poison with water, and thus it turned into fertilizer, thus the poison became medicine. What was wrong with her? Nellie thought in horror. Maybe she was cursed, because everything she tried to spoil had the opposite effect.